second item, and I don't know where that goes, Mr. Chair. Second item is service review process. Discussion.
Yeah, I'll add those to, just after old business, item 9. We have a lot to do before that, so we will make sure that they're on, but we'll do that before we ever get to our closed meeting.
And can I suggest, Chair, like Stuart's not gonna be on today.
No.
He's gotta be at, he managed to get some of the meetings yesterday, but he's, working away. Service review is a big topic. Maybe it's something that staff should have time, I mean, Mike could probably give us, but they should have time to plan how they're gonna address it.
Well, the discussion is, what is the process?
Sorry, and I'm not meant to debate, it's
Okay,
just,
so-
it's,
In the resulting discussion, hope we come up with an idea of dedicating an additional meeting, because we simply won't be able to have that wholesome discussion today.
it's a big
I
thing.
would suggest that we consider that as an additional meeting, pack up our schedules in kind of for the next while. Otherwise,
Mr. Chair.
All day, so thank you very much. So just a motion to adopt the agenda. I guess we'll just follow the agenda amended. We'll continue that with, first delegate. Before we do that, let's recognize receipt of the minutes of January 11th, 2024 as well.
Chair,
Yes,
did we offer Councillor Dumas the freedom of floor?
yes, we've got that. Well,
I will so move.
seconded, motion. Director Attorney, seconded by Director Vadberg. All in favor? So we have freedom of the floor. We can amend the agenda, but there was also the inclusion of Creston Valley Airport budget discussion in that amendment. So now we'll go to our delegation. Steve, you have the floor now.
Thank you. Is it okay if I come and sit with you?
Absolutely.
Put your in the water. Thank you very much for having me. I've made this presentation to town council and staff, so my apologies for those of you that this is probably a bit repetitive. But I felt that it was important for the directors to hear about a report that was released by United Way late November. And I think I sent it to all of you. If you haven't received it, let me know and I'll resend it. I didn't print it for you today because it's like 70 pages
It's
long.
in our package.
Is it? Okay. So I just wanted to highlight, I'll be very brief because I know we've got a big agenda, but I just wanted to highlight some of the things that this report brings forward because I think it's really important for Creston. And they actually have Creston stats in here, which is really helpful to see because quite often it's like Harvard or Nelson or not at all. So it talks about the population of seniors growing so significantly, 20% increase since 2017. And there are only a 0.1% increase in senior subsidized housing units. And 30% of those are rent geared to income. So those are the lower available to people with lower income. Subsidized housing units have decreased by 6% since 2017-18. And the wait list for seniors housing units has increased by 45% since then. So we know there's a housing crisis, it's for all ages, but this report specifically speaks to about seniors. They talk about the toll that it takes on seniors when they are not able to access housing and the hopelessness that creates and the mental health problems that result. And basically it results in more mental health services being required because people are not able to be properly housed. And that's a crisis as well because there are not enough mental health services for adults, period, let alone specifically for seniors. So for Creston, the statistics say that the number of people living in unaffordable housing, that means they're spending 30% of their more housing is 115. I think that's a lot higher in Creston. That's the statistic that they've come up with. I'm not sure. Precariously housed people, they say are 30, and those percentages are 59% and 15% respectively. So they do talk about the fact that they aren't able to survey absolutely everybody, and so these numbers may be quite a bit lower than what the actual numbers would be. So the report also talks about staff and volunteer burnout among housing service providers, and just lack of supports for those people who are trying to provide housing. And I think that it's something that Creston can do some things about. So we are fortunate at Valley Community Services to be able to apply for some funding coming up this April to support, to provide a staff person to support seniors navigating systems, which is amazing. We have always needed this, and our 2 seniors programs, TAPS and Better at Home, have always kind of done this off the side of their desk. They really don't have the time to do it well. So for example, we had a gentleman come in the other day, elderly, needing to access healthcare. He could not access any paid, the reduced cost for prescriptions, is it fair? We don't help people do applications or work through forms or navigate systems just because we have a lot of time. This person will be able to actually support it. And he didn't know where to start, like he needed 3 years back of income tax statements and things. So we'll be able to help people. So I'll just briefly talk about the goals and what they recommended out of this report. So the first goal was to increase access to subsidized rent-secured income housing for low-income people. Obviously, that would be great. The second goal is to retain what housing does exist. So a lot of housing is old, and just making sure that that housing is still available. The third goal is to develop multi-sectoral community tables, coalitions, or alliances to identify common housing issues and develop community-driven solutions. I think the town is already doing this, which is fantastic. The fourth goal is to increase financial assistance for low and moderate income seniors living in private market rental housing by introducing needed changes in the SAFER program. The fifth, to increase access to housing with supports, both social and health supports, to ensure that low-income seniors can maintain their housing tenancy and improve their health and well-being. So we are working on this. And the sixth is to ensure that housing navigation supports the shelter system and transitional and low-income rental housing are not only adequately funded, but also accessible, safe, and appropriate for seniors who are homeless or precariously housed. And I know that Tom's doing work on that. I just thought it was important that everyone was aware of this report. If you have any questions about it, get a hold of me. The people who developed the report are part of a council that I sit on with United Way. So if there was any more information that you would need or that might be useful for you, to reach out to them and see.
Questions, Director Jack?
Sure, thank you, through the chair. So the position you're talking about, that'd be the one that Lisa Sear had talked about, trying to get more granular, like, instead of people from Victoria or Vancouver, she's in Revelstoke, she's trying to coordinate across the cookies. So how, first question, I guess, how granular is it going to get? Like, does it look like a 0.5 FTE for sort of Creston Valley
So
Lake area, or how?
I think, I haven't got the application yet, I think it's a full-time position, 1 FTE, which is amazing. And what I hope to do with that 1 FTE is have like 75% of it in Creston and 25%, if that works, for the East Shore. Because it's too hard for us to provide staff in Creston to travel to the East Shore to provide service, because the cost of transportation, like we have to reimburse them for kilometers and asking them to work on the lake, right? And it becomes so much budget that we have to allocate to travel, that if I can have somebody on the East Shore do that work who's already living there, it's way more economical. So that's what I would hope to do, because it's a big geographic region, it would go all the way from Yonge to, it actually cuts off, it's the most bizarre thing. but
At
we're
Mountain
not-
Shores,
Yeah,
that's, sorry, but
it's the health.
that's the local
it's the
health. I'm on 2 hospital boards. There used to be, the MLA cut off there years ago. Part of Area A used to be in Area B.
So
But
we
traffic
can-
used to be by boat from Randell to Woodbury and Castle. And they've never moved those lines.
So we're allowed to ignore it.
Um, Interior Health has ignored it successfully after a great deal of lobbying, and I think that would be the point, to ignore it.
Yeah.
And if somebody thought they needed to balance a few $1,000s here or there, they can figure it out.
I don't.
It's perfect. The second point I wanted to raise was encouraging and disappointing at the same time. In 2015, in Warfield, we held across East, West, and Central Kootenays, plus beyond local government association, we had the brand new seniors advocate out 2015, so 9 years back. Recognizing all this, recognizing the demographic shift, recognizing the housing shift. And the message was kind of like, well, people kind of move and adjust and it'll all work out, and it has not worked out. Now we see a lot of new homes, a lot of new residential care units coming on in Nelson. We keep crossing our fingers that we're gonna see a large increase in Cranbrook. But projects that, you hear Treasury Board may or may not look at. Meanwhile, we're stuck in the middle of the gap. And so I appreciate that we have a few voices here to keep saying, we're stuck in the middle. And it's fine if people can relocate to the larger centers and still have family and friends and support, but they can't all relocate. It's unfair. So thanks for continuing to push this, because what we knew, and we go a year or two beyond that when we started looking at the hard data, we knew fully a decade ago this demographic shift was gonna hit us harder than Kamloops, Kelowna, and nothing was done.
What we're finding is just geographic, because it's such a big geographic area, it's expensive, right? It's really expensive to provide service in such a big area. If we were just interested, it's easy. But
Any other questions? Dr. Madigan?
Hey, Justine.
hi.
This is on our plate every day, in all sorts, shapes, and sizes and fashions. We are truly advocating to the province and the feds for their responsibility in all this. It's like talking to the wall sometimes. So on a municipal level, we can only do so much. Awareness is huge, and that's what you help with today. We're sitting in a room here of elderly seniors, and so we kind of know, well, sorry, Gary, you're the younger.
No, I'm a senior, but there's a couple people here that aren't.
So we are sensitive to what's going on, and we notice the population that's vulnerable. But certainly from my point of view, understanding the bigger picture and then driving forward with that messaging, because housing affects everyone. So this report is just confirming stuff that we already know. It's got a little bit more mental health in it, which is true. So I appreciate that. Other than as a municipal government, there's only so many triggers that we can pull, and but we have a voice. So I'm fully prepared to use that.
Thank you for doing that.
Any other questions?
Just thank you, Christine, for your presentation. Just really reinforces what we're hearing elsewhere.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just a couple of things I wanted to mention. Our MLA will be here on February 10th at the farmer's market. I'm sure she's aware of this, but I wouldn't hurt to give her a copy of this.
Yeah, she was it.
And the second thing is, because we have our operating what we call our home shelter, I guess we'd be very interested statistically to see how many people in this situation are using it, not so much for overnight shelter, but I understand there's showers and other things available. And there are people living in their vehicles here. It's getting used somewhat by them. I'd like to know how many of those are seniors that have a housing problem, because that would be interesting. I'm sure they're keeping stats on that. Because again, to measure in our community how many people are, they have to do it in a lot of different ways just because of protection and privacy. So we don't have accurate stats, and we have to look at the report because it tells us a lot, but we don't know exactly what the impact is here. And the more information we can get, the better, because it's has to go into our into the plans that we make. So appreciate this, and I really hope that we can add more localized information. And unfortunately, personal stories, but personal stories make a difference because people then can have some more empathy. So that's what I'd like to see happen in the future. Just gather more information to show us all how urgent this is.
We might be able to provide you with data. I did it once for the Creston Valley Housing Society. Our women's program serves a lot of vulnerable women, and I think we had a stat it's about 20% of the people accessing the program were either unhoused or precariously housed living. So we could provide you with some of that data.
Yeah, and I would appreciate that because, of course, a lot of what we do is look for grants.
Yeah.
And the more information we have to support the grant request we have, the better. And so it shows an urgent problem here. And again, our geographics here makes it complex. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Now, Creston Valley Chamber of Commerce.
Oh,
So you guys can go on.
The second is just an invite that's going to be going out to business owners. It talks about a couple events, but I thought I'd throw it in there. Help me spread the word about those events.
is there coffee and cookies?
Thank you.
Okay. My name is Natasha, Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce, and I am here this morning to talk to you guys about Canada Day celebration. These, what I did here today for you guys to look at, these are just ideas. A lot of what we want to plan is dependent on what facilities we use and what area we want to plan it to. Ideally, we would like it to happen here at the rec center. I spoke with someone that's on the committee for the Canyon Park Canada Day celebration. They have stuff going on from 9 a.m. till 1 p.m. They finish up with a big ball tournament there around 1 p.m. So we thought it would be a good idea to start it around 4:30. A few of the ideas, like it says, I thought about having food trucks, farmers market stalls, maybe the fire department, dunk tanks, some face painting, possible beer gardens, portable music stage with local artists. We have a volunteer business group organizing a big color run. Currently, it's myself from Courtney Ford, Jill from Valley View, and Brian Peeler from Peters Independent. In conversation with the town council about possible light show, fireworks, maybe hiring a photographer, drones, and some type of mini event that would take place at the skate park. A little bit about the color run. It would start around 5 p.m. It's not a timed run, it's a family run. And there's the pricing there. If anybody's familiar with the color run, you get the swag pack and you sign up for the run. It has your color packs in it. It's a cornstarch, food coloring, pretty safe coloring. And then they blow the horn for the race to start, and everybody wear their color cannons, and everybody throws out their packets of color. They're all dressed in white. It's a lot of fun, you're filled with color everywhere, and then you follow the route and come back. And then basically when everyone's come back from the run, we have the food trucks going. Everybody has their options either to go downtown for dinner or to use the food trucks. We have the stage going in the field with local artists playing music for the night. I can see like hula hoops and kids and face painting. It's just a big celebration for Canada Day. And then end the night with fireworks or some type of like There's obviously some big things to think about still that we're in planning, garbage crew, security, whether we rent porta potties, especially for those participating in the power run, because we don't want them in the rec center. Other special events permits, water and power to the field, and then business sponsors for the color run. So I'm here to discuss it today because I'm under the understanding that there are a lot of fees associated with using the rec center, especially as it's big for that day. So we wanted to discuss your support if possible, waiving fees for the use of this space for that day. And any type of ideas and collaboration for the day would be great. That's pretty much my spiel. If anybody has any questions.
Guess first question, and maybe through first to Craig, what's planned currently? Anything rumbling around for planned events for Canada Day?
Yeah, through the chair, we haven't, since the pandemic, in my time, we haven't had any Canada Day events other than the 2022 fireworks show that the Creston Fire Department put on, well attended. We haven't, so we're typically closed on Canada Day, so we don't have a staff budget for that. We don't have a staff budget for Canada Day this year.
So if I can, waiving fees is not the best way to do things, because everybody wants the fees waived, right? So we tax to cover all the capital cost of this facility, and we recover 30 to 35% of the operating cost, more or less, through fees. Not to say we wouldn't just say let's waive the fees, but if you take the approach, it's not a Chamber of Commerce event, it's a partnered event, if it's the regional district event, the fees are kind of not the issue. So I mean, to me, this is a great opportunity to have it as an official partnership of the Creston Valley Rec Center and the Chamber of Commerce. We sort of maybe don't, if that works, we don't really talk about fees, we just talk about making sure the facilities are ready, staff will be here, and then that the other partner will make sure things are coordinated during the event. Is that a viable approach? Instead of saying someone's renting it, we just partnering in the event.
So, and I know Bill might have a comment to this, but for us, given that we haven't approved the budget, we could build a budget for that because the staff required to open and maintain and keep the facility safe and clean up after the event is significant. Well, relatively because it's a stat holiday, but also if you talk about a partnership where the chamber or their committee were to just take over the space and there was no other planning involvement from us, then the cost is literally just the day of. So if we looked at a number for being open on a stat holiday at about $1,500 for custodians and facility staff, that would be the bare minimum. But if there's any other planning required, that would be additional to our current workload.
But I think that'd be the most sensible approach, because there may be 2 or 3 other groups that also say, hey, yeah, you got a crowd drawn, and if we're not conflicting, let's also do this, or let's have this message put out, or have something that's maybe, for a different segment of the population, a little more appropriate or something, and we build on, as opposed to saying, you have rental of the space and we'll do something. Plus, if your volunteer base isn't quite what you hope it would be, then we have the capacity for a pretty small percentage of our budget to make sure it's a really well executed event. There's a bit of backup, which is what partnership's all about.
One, I think as the chamber or board, we go into every event that we're planning with that mentality. We're always looking for partnerships and ideas and collaborations.
And through the chair, I think part of that equation, and I see in the plan that fireworks is recommended, but there is, as we said with the Christmas parade, there is money in economic development. I think is allocated $5,000 for fireworks on an annual basis. I think that is still carried forward in this year.
There's federal grants as well for that. If you want to go fireworks, I'm monopolizing. I get a lot of pushback on fireworks. I'd rather see we transition to laser light show or something.
Sure, and through the chair, the funding is there. You don't have to use it for fireworks, is what I'm saying.
Yes, thank you. Further to the picture that Director Jackman is painting, my question would be to the chair, AKA the mayor. What's the timing for the 100-year celebration for Creston. When is that expected to, is that around the Canada Day weekend as well, or in terms of
I think
partnering?
we have somebody who can answer that very well, right? Go ahead.
The actual celebration is May 14th. That's the actual day that Creston was incorporated, and so that will be a drone show here in the field. And then we are partnering with Blossom Festival, which is the May long weekend. And then there's different events going on throughout the year, but the biggest is Blossom Festival weekend, and then the actual May 14th.
Okay, just wanted to see if there's some connectivity there.
I think there is.
I know there is.
No.
100th anniversary is definitely a separate celebration because of the date of it, so I don't know how much could be combined, because by that time, everything's set and done, it sounds like, so.
Well, I think it's important that your external user groups hop on board with that celebration in their own little community factions. So we wouldn't want to discourage that. And certainly the town wants to take time to celebrate its 100 years, but the community probably want to plug in various ways. But of course, the time, the date doesn't go for this project.
We have an active group planning the entire celebration, so that you have pretty much laid out plan, so.
It's great, maybe if the light show goes off really well and there's a huge crowd, then they'll want to see it again on Canada Day, maybe a smaller scale, but.
And if Tammy has historical information prepared for May 14th, then maybe she'd be able to set it up again Canada Day. That kind of thing.
So, I guess, yeah, go ahead.
Very quickly, so Creston Dunbar, corporate officer, is really kind of on the 100-year line. Just so that we, because I going into budgets, if there's any change in budgets or any line help, can you outline the cost of the drone show?
So we're doing a 70 drone show, and that is about $14,000. So it's a significant cost as compared to fireworks, which can range from 8 to 10,000. So just building that in, and then there's still the drone shows are set to speaker system, and the speaker system you have to run on top of that. So you need to factor that piece in. And the RDCK might do that, but if they don't, then you could be looking at about 15 to 16,000.
If I can add to that, I think traditionally, fireworks was done on Canada Day, I think the last 4 or 5 years has proved it's incredibly difficult to plan for. In fact, it's, last year, fire bans were on so early, we didn't bother ordering the fireworks because fire bans were on, you can't let them go at that time. And then weirdly, they come off, but when they come off, it takes 6 to 8 weeks to order your fireworks, so it wasn't time to order them. And I think, did they come back on by July 1st?
Yeah.
They were back on anyway.
Shortly there, right.
Yeah, so it's really getting to the point that that's difficult. So I think, if in the future, your night shows, fireworks, July 1st with wildfire season. And then the last point is, when we do the fireworks show, or any show, here is, at night, one of the things we do need, rec center staff, because they turn out a lot of the parking lot lights, or else the parking lot's lit up so bright that it doesn't matter. So the staff are still at the facility, whether your facility's open, they provide a lot of support to those firefighters.
The pushback in fireworks is twofold. Some people who are worried about animal distress, but more and more lately, it's as government, here we are promoting fireworks, as you run up into the bush and up the lake, and they're saying, what are you doing? Now everyone else thinks it's good too. Even if we got open fields and fire coverage and all the safety, government's blowing off fireworks, we're giving too. And it's a bad image, and I get a lot of response to that.
Go ahead now.
Thanks. I just wanted to make sure that we're not totally focusing on the fireworks piece. Like that is one of the things that we would like to try to plan, but we understand the difficulty with that, especially with the time of the year and the cost to that piece of it. But our event really is focused around trying to get the families and something to do on Canada Day, which we heard last year, that the community was really sad that there wasn't anything. So we would like to really try to plan that family-based event that's happening throughout the afternoon on Canada Day. And of course, fireworks, I think, is gonna be one of those things that's gonna go in the, due to our climate changes, that it's just gonna be one of those things. So I think in the future, we can start talking about light shows on Canada Day and making sure you're correct that it's built into budgets. But this event for this year is not, that's not the main focus. So if we can have it, that's great. If we can't, we're gonna do something different. And so just I wanted to focus on that to make the success of the event.
Yeah, absolutely. The light show at the end of the night would be just that cherry on top of the night. It's the finale before everyone goes home. It can also just be karaoke song, music stage. Sings whatever. Oh, Canada goes home. Doesn't have to be that. Especially with being 14 happening, it's just, like I said, these are all ideas for the celebration. They might get added to and some not happening.
I'm wondering if we need a staff direction here.
Through the chair, we do need staff direction because, a partnership implies liability. And then we would have to ensure that planning was done sufficiently, otherwise it would be a rental lease sort of situation. So, yeah, we do need some direction.
So I move that, direction to staff that they investigate that they meet with Chamber of Commerce to plan a partner Canada Day event and provide the appropriate budgetary impact in the draft budget, 2024 budget.
Christine, did you get that?
We have a seconder for that motion. Director Vandenberg. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Oh, I know it's just
Director Vandenberg.
Because of the budget, we're heavy into it and living and breathing it. The timeline for this is important, budget considerations as well,
So, through the chair, the staff at $1,500 to keep the facility open, depending on the timeline and then planning and oversight. $5,000 seems like a contribution we could afford at this point. And would be appropriate for the size of the event.
not to exceed.
And as I said before, if there's money earmarked in the ACDF budget for these events, I think it was 5,000 for fireworks, 5,000 for the Christmas parade. It could be also a funding source.
Do we want to leave that level of funding at this point or work out the details first?
I don't know if it's necessary because we have a couple opportunities for Craig and Joe to throw the dart. And whatever number we put in, we don't have to spend, so long as it's authorized in the financial plan, we can amend, we go down, we go up. Just getting the line item, I think is important with a reasonable, throw the dart.
Okay. I think that's appropriate number.
Okay, so we'll kind of aim for that in the staff direction, but not specifically. Okay.
Yeah. And that's 30 cents per man, woman, and child to actually celebrate the fact that we're a stable, friendly, good place to live. 30 cents, I'll get my 30 cents out of my pocket right now.
All in favor? It's carried. Thanks, I think that's a great idea. I know our community misses the Canada Day celebrations.
Heard it a lot in the business world.
Yeah.
That's why we chose that day.
So come comment on social media, because people they want Canada Day, they want fireworks, but I think I've seen one drone show, was very impressive, and so if we don't have fireworks and we have drone shows, people will be happy, it's safer and cleaner.
It'll be as good as the Pink Floyd concerts from 3 decades ago with the light show. Lasers and fog.
Yes.
What a relive my youth.
And just a little shameless plug before I go, we have our chat and cheers networking event tonight. It's at Creston Valley for business owners. If you guys would like to attend, it for free. May of the town of Creston might more speaking at their lunch next week. So if anybody wants to come back, it's 2 exciting monthly events.
It's not shameless.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot. So headed to new business, Creston Valley Regional Airport letter of support. Kind of the reason this came back to us is because we just didn't really have this discussion at the last ICA board meeting, but so I deferred it back here. And it would be what I'm asking for, I think the motion here that we move forward with this so that at the board table it can be passed. That's all we want to do.
I had a couple of questions, I guess, before we phrase the motion. I mean, and to elaborate a little bit, a bit of the reason why I kicked back is that I've been a strong advocate at the board, that we do our business at committee, we know what we want, we go to board and we expect the board of 20 to say, yeah, go ahead. We don't want to be arguing as 4 members of the board about what's good for us. And it's worked really well for a lot of years. So you throw something out of the blue at the board that doesn't have a recommendation from this committee. And as often as not, it can be like, oh, we don't understand what it's all about, what kind of airport it is, it's not run by the municipality, it's not this, it's not that, gets referred. So at agenda prep, because I sit on the agenda prep committee like yesterday, this is the kind of thing we say belongs here, because we've always operated so well here. The question in general, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, is if there's another application in for master planning and the like, is there a perception this will have an impact? If the same reviewer happens to see one that, let's do this or build this, and then they see another application, let's have a plan to see if we're doing and building the right stuff. How's that gonna go? Will it impact our opportunity overall in getting what I think, like it or not, today, the first thing I'd rather see is a master plan so that we really understand, are we optimizing revenue potentials? Are we investing in the right direction? Is the investment, I'm gonna be very blunt, preferential to private aviators, hangar rentals or opportunity to use city land to build your hangar at a preferred or preferential rate as opposed to general benefits to the public at large, which is great that we have an organization, a society that keeps that runway open for medevac and those very important issues, or to support a BC wildfire effort. So I have no idea how the balance is fitting. What incrementally year by year, who's benefiting most by that partnership of 3-way, regional district funding, the town holding that site with whatever agreements you might have, and volunteers working really hard to make sure that we have the public benefits of medevac. The master plan will answer a lot of those questions. Where are we at? What are our opportunities? I really don't want to see that not get funded. So I don't know if Mike has any, through the chair, CEO, has any more information? Does it impact us having competing applications?
I'm told by Ministry of Transportation, a brief conversation with them that there are 2 different streams, but that's, as you pointed out, if it's the same person, but
We don't know. Okay.
Yeah, we did provide a letter of support to the town of Creston for this
Yes.
generator, so. Again, it is a good idea to bring those forward to this committee before it is asked of RDCK, so that's why we wanted to just formalize that step. I guess we can assume one won't affect the other, and there is a real need to have a generator that year. So I guess what I would ask is just the motion that we hear and work that are going back to the RDCK.
So moved.
I'll second it. If we're not in jeopardy, I'll second it. I have another question. Discussion.
It's time for discussion.
So Interior Health paid $300,000 to put that little tiny generator at the clinic in Crawford Bay. If you drive by, you can see there's been a machine there for all winter. They had a delay on the switchgear, all that stuff. These numbers are horrific. We had a $30,000 waste budget for generators at some of our transfer stations, water waste. In our water service budgets for backup generators at some of our water treatment plants, and that grew to 60 and then 80. And yesterday I was told, conversation on the side, we're probably going to contain that at the 80,000 per generator. But this is a horrible time to be going out to buy generators still. So I hope that we end up being a majority funder of whatever leveraging grant, that we're really careful that we get value for money buying a generator these days, because it sounds like some suppliers are gouging.
We've got benefit from a procurement expert on finding those.
Yep.
Sure.
And Regional District has just been buying through Alexandra Divlikowski. She's just been in the market looking at propane versus diesel. What makes sense? Some of these diesel generators are not worth the money if you're not gonna run it for 3 days running. Propane can be a very efficient option, depending if you just wanna operate minimal, like lighting in the emergency center, that kind of stuff. So I hope there'd be some careful shopping.
Any other discussions? All in favor? We look back to board then for report, so that will happen next week. Oh, that was, his letter of support. Now we welcome you up for the budget discussion. Step forward, please.
No,
Standby generator system is a nightmare for everybody now. The wildfires, see, and all of these emergency response programs need to get back up the power. So just for example, generator we applied in the granting system for, it wasn't that bad when we applied a year ago or got talking about it a year or better ago. We put some feelers out, so to the local electricians, they came back with some numbers. Incredibly high, and they said, sorry, it's access, it's supply. So we picked one. And then he came back with a, sorry guys, our information went wrong. The price is now increased by $27,000 because of support. So here we are. The budget. We have this budget that was approved at our board meetings in October. And it was sent through to the town and the RDA at the time. There was a couple of one change on it that we noticed here a few days ago, and that is we corrected that, but it's a minor change. Last year was fairly busy with the wildfire response. Our airport was used quite a bit. Primarily it was fuel sales to the helicopter firefighting system. The last of the federal government, $180,000 grant that came through in 2021 was used up this year. Runway crack sealing, which is a significant cost, and we tracked down a snow blower. So notably is the cost increases on some just regular expenses and big time contractor reluctance to give firm quotes for more that stand for more than 2 or 3 weeks. They just wash their hands of it. Makes it almost impossible to manage when we're applying for grants. We made a correction on the expense portion on the expense line item for residential mortgage interest. Our form is set up to apply the CPI percentage index to all category or all the lines, except that mortgage interest, mortgages is not subject to CPI, so we corrected that small change. We are projecting, hopefully, and reluctantly, a fuel sales increase based on the projected increase in forest fires. We're told this is coming. The reluctance there is That's not the way we want to make our money or serve the airport. And also, BC Forestry has changed their policies about fueling helicopters in fires, and that they are moving the the whole firefighting process to the camps at the fires, which means is they're taking fuel trucks out to the helicopters there, which removes the requirement for them to shut down while they're refueling. They get hot fuel. And hot fuel on an airport. Risks and liabilities, the whole thing is, and boy, these guys, and when you gotta spool down a helicopter and then fire it back up again, that's running time on the helicopter that don't get charged out. So these guys that own helicopters are really pushing back against shutting down. Anyway,
Is our mortgage at the airport, is that paid off 2027?
Yeah.
That,
yes, it is.
one less expense, which is great.
Well, yeah,
You got 3 sheets here, so we just look at the first one, I guess we'll move to the next one.
yeah, the first one is the 5-year budget, where the 24 year for 2024. We didn't separate it out, it's partly in there. It's in there just in part. Yes.
Yeah, so before we move away from that, my questions are membership fees. Who are members that would pay fees is my first question. The second one is, how many hangar buildings do you have and what is the revenue?
Okay, those membership fees that are up there, that is our association members. Either new members coming in or renewals of, because our membership fee in the association is $20 a year for or $20 for 5 years. And that gives you the privilege of being insured, covered when you're working. These are the volunteers.
Aren't you underselling that?
Well, if I can,
Yeah, go ahead.
what you don't show in this budget and revenue is the in-kind revenue from those volunteers. So that's where, again, and this is where a wholesome master plan exercise, it really looks at what's going on there and the social benefits, the individual benefits of members, but then the actual input of those members. So if you had any kind of a estimate of how many hundreds of hours per year, per person, that kind of thing, then you would say, is that a valid revenue? And obviously it is for every society. Your volunteer base is part of what makes you tick, and we don't have any understanding of that.
Yeah. As usual, a good point. We have got we're tracking our volunteer hours. But it's kind of like, you know how it is to get volunteers to write down hours that they actually work. Like you gotta trap them into it.
And if I may, so the requisition is 200,000, and it seems to be the same amount every year, but that's well over half of the operating budget. And you don't want to make any further profit on the fuel sales, which seems to be the biggest number that you have. I don't understand the in-kind, as Director Jackman pointed out. I don't understand how the hangar revenue, how that works, and if there's any opportunity there. I guess from my point of view, for taxpayers' dollars, what is the value we're getting here? So that's where I want to be able to understand this better. It's
Yeah, here, yeah. What the value of the airport is, first off, in the light flights, medevacs and angel flights. The second value in here is the businesses. And we don't have a way of measuring that. But we have a hard time even telling you how many flights there are. We just filled in and out the liability insurance sheet for the airport. And we're making some assumptions of the numbers of flights. But the businesses is the one that seems to be, it's a money generator in part for this community. Because what you get is a lot of businesses. They do business here, they're headquartered somewhere else, the wineries. The winery up here that's just come in and they're building their winery, they're from Mission, Mission Wineries out in the open.
Boswell.
And we could make a lot of money by just videoing those guys coming in their suits and ties, getting into little jump trucks to run up the hill. And because we asked them a couple of times, why you bring a helicopter following your plane, your business plane? And then fly them up the hill. Why not just drive? So they finally left the vehicle at the airport and now they truck them up there. And we can't even track, we don't know, we just know that these planes that show up, there's a business comes and picks them up, they're gone. We don't know how many there are, because we have no way of tracking because it's a little bit expensive to track that.
So I understand, and the question is, Mike, I understand that there's a preparation to do a study on the airport, feasibility, economic, I'm not sure, am I wrong?
Yeah, so the budget request through this committee for service.
Yes, 108.
No, service report.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, for service
Yes.
report, but to do an airport master plan. Appropriate, proper airport master plan. Which would look at basically you're looking at the social and economic values of the airport to be able to answer that very fundamental question you just asked, what is the value of the airport? And I can point to a number of anecdotal or empirical views of what I think the airport's worth, just as Mr. Kitchen has just done for you, but none of them are really grounded in it. So I think what we need to do is just have that full, wholesome, social economic view of the airport. Put it over and look at what is that value. And then, and the questionable hangar leases and revenues, I think that's all part of that conversation. So right now, and I'll use that hangar leases just as an example, because they're all coming up for expiry at the end of 2025. The value in my mind for the leases are pretty low, and I think they should probably apply. That said, I'm not, that's would be as the CEO of the town and just looking at it with that view. But those hangar leases, I guess, they're the volunteers out there that keep it going. They do. So what is the value of that? That's kind of part of them getting the lease at a price, like, because you want your airport to be functioning and active and all that. And so, like, if you look at, I know Bonner's Ferry, when you drive by their airport of recent years, you see a lot of activity and growth there. And I don't know what the hangar lease rates are, but I think that it's all part of it. So I wouldn't want to just set a price that suddenly would chase everybody away from there and then you have a dwindling airport. And so I think that's all part of that airport master, being able to really look at what is the social economic values, what is long-term sustainability, what are the revenue streams, what are the future opportunity revenue streams. There is some commercial value that that's taking place now, and certainly could be increased. Economic development wise, so there's just a lot of things at play, and I think that's where that master plan was really highlighted.
Sorry, have you gotten direction from this group to proceed with something like that and what the cost is? I do believe we did talk.
We looked at cost splitting and finishing it over 2 years because it won't happen in 1 year, so it's less of a shock to the budget.
Yeah, so if I remember where they're pulling out the memo or the staff report, but I think the estimated budget for the master plan with everything all in was about 80,000. If we applied for a grant through the BC Air Access Program, take care of 35,000, and then the remaining balance, we were gonna split over 2 years out of the SC4 budget.
Yeah, 15 in the first year and the balance in the second, or 1/3, something along that line.
Yeah.
It won't happen and
We
starting
approved
here.
that at school level, but those funds are. You need to get the rest of it to get it going.
And so my apologies to Bob for sidetracking this, but this is in my mind and I need clarity on this.
The struggle we have all the time as operating is we see things that have to be done. And to get the money for it, is it needs that master plan to pin down exactly what is required out there. And then the grant application is a way easier because it's identified, supported. Our problem is getting to that point. And, you're right, we had a master plan, what was the date on the last? Quite a while.
1990.
Yeah, so, but there's things that come up since then. That we really could use out there, the common theme, for example, is just, we want scheduled service at this airport, there's a lot of call for it. Is there enough call for it? We don't know, that would support it. There's been people who tried it privately and failed because of the lack of support. But we don't also have the facilities out there to provide a scheduled service. First off, you gotta be able to turn the plane around on the runway. We've had private owners come in, companies that are doing the recreation thing, come in from Calgary on a Dash 8. Park the plane in Creston, drive them in a bus up to the golf resort at Creston Valley
Springs.
And I'm the guy that's sitting there responsible for the airport, and I hear on the radio, there's a Dash 8 coming in. He's not gonna land here. Oh yeah, he is. We have 75 feet of runway.
They can back up, it's just they don't like doing that.
The
Like fuel.
turning ratio of a Dash 8 is 74 feet.
Yeah.
We don't have the equipment to put them back on the runway if it gets off. So we need those turnaround bays, which is another thing that if it goes to this point, we're putting a lot of, I was the happiest guy that was this spring. Mike told us that we were looking at, we have access, you guys have access to some money for master plans. And he was gonna push it through the budget and get it going. Holy, that's my final exit here. That's gonna make it a lot happier.
So we have 3 budget sheets here. Is there anything you want to put out in?
Just what these are, like this first sheet, the 5-year budget, you can take the 4, that's, and our ask doesn't come out at 200,000 a month or a year. It's been a lot lower, and 2 years ago, was it, Mr. Jackman, that you brought up the asset account?
Yeah,
And,
that you need, asset management and reserve. So you went from 139.6 in 2022
the
to
issue
203.
The issue there was incorrectly, we weren't keeping track of our assets account so that we could answer the question of, what are you doing to build up a fund to replace the equipment that you got? Well, that's what these other couple of sheets are here is the asset account. One is just the totals on a spreadsheet of how much money is in each. We're allocated right now at the end of January to each of these account. One is the capital asset account, our equipment. And these other ones is a breakdown of the asset accounts as to, for example, in the capital equipment, as to what everything is, what its expectation life is,
We didn't get
and value and all that sort of stuff. So that's all those are. 2 years ago, you gave us, we come out with, we needed $50,000 minimum to support that equipment replacing annually. And you came up with it for 2 years so far. And this year we're asking the same thing. We don't see a difference.
So
The change,
question to staff is on a requisition draft financial plan, the requisitions are calling for $200 and almost $3,000. So is that accurate?
that's works out. It does, because our expenses are running $2,700 more in total than our total revenue. So including that 201. Yeah, so that's where the extra comes in.
Yeah,
Well, the one number you just mentioned was 2023 actuals, was about 23,000. The sheet in front of us for us 240 is 2024 207 change. We haven't flagged the specific line item for the master plan contribution, which again I thought was about 15,000 in 2024. So we may be missing a line item on our side to partner with the town for the master plan. And then out of the 207, there's always a bit of our overhead and community services fee. So anyway, that leaves up to 205,800 for grants, but it doesn't show how that's broken. 205.8 is not enough to kick in 15,000 for the master plan plus give anywhere close to what we gave the airport last year. This is, so that needs adjustment.
So through the chair,
go ahead, Joe.
yeah, thanks Bob for all the good work on this. Bob, just to understand the 5-year plan that we have here, this is kind of similar to the museum in some ways in their budget. For this year, so for the money that you receive from the regional district in August, I'm looking at the 208,635 for operating, is that correct? From 2025?
It's the annual grant RDCK number on that spreadsheet.
First sheet, annual rest for 2025.
And you're looking at 2025?
In this one, Bob, in this sheet, first block halfway, proposed annual grant.
Yeah.
2024, 201.8.
Yeah.
2025 jumps to 208, jumps and jumps.
Yeah, that just works. Yeah.
Forecast.
Okay, so I would need, so on the financial plan, I would need, if I'm understanding the conversation correctly, I would need for the committee to consider, is the direct staff to, I could change the financial plan so that the grant to the airport is 208,635. Director Jackman's correct. What's in there right now is the in 2024 is 205,810. So we're a little shy based upon that request. Then it sounds like that there is possibly funding that we need to match or provide to the town of Creston or to the Airport Society for the master plan. And if I'm understanding correctly, that's 15,000.
If I may through the chair, Joe, there's a staff report, or a town of Creston staff report put into the committee
July.
no, I think it was last fall, November.
Another fall, yeah.
It was during the fall sometime, either September or October, I think.
Yeah.
It was up in those meetings, but, that has the breakdown of the cost. And I can't remember, if it was 15,000 or 20,000 was for this year, and then the remaining the next year.
Yeah.
And so I could make those two adjustments for the financial plan, one for 2024 and one for 2025.
Yeah.
Is just if you could get that as direction, just so I know that it was actually approved for this.
You need a direction on that, Joe?
Sorry, if you're okay with me just taking that as a note right now, if I understand, it's just, I just want to make sure. The only thing is just that everyone's in agreement with me making that change.
If I can, 2 points, so a discrete line item contribution to master plan, 15,000, so I recall, I can't find it. And then the 205 versus the 203, et cetera, are we trying to use our Bob's projection, because he works from August onwards, using his 2025 amount, or are we using his 2024 amount, which is lower?
So we can give you a 2024.
Yeah, this is always our dilemma, like with everything that we only, for the museum, we only give the money halfway through their partway through their fiscal year. Because what Bob's sheet shows here is you would be anticipating in 2024, 201,775. You would not anticipate asking until the 2025 fiscal year, the 208. However, our fiscal years don't match.
That's correct. And through the chair, that the 201 is last year's.
That's the actual from 2023. Okay.
Correct.
So you would put the grant to the society up to 208, 635, and add an additional line item of 15,000 contribution to town. Next year, you're gonna have the balance of that, another 30,000, I believe it is, contribution for the master plan, roughly. If you targeted those numbers for 24 and 25, we can correct it when and if we know about the grant. And of course, we don't even have a consultant quote. We have no idea if 80 is close to being correct in today's market.
Well,
You did go
I did
to,
have a quote, and there's extra in there for that contingency.
right, sure, sorry, you did do your homework. So my direction to staff, I guess, to put out there would be match the society's request of 28635, add the 15, and then I'll move that as the adjustment to draft financial plan, and if it's seconded, we can debate up or down.
Okay. Seconded by Director Curie. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor? Okay, there's your direction for now, and thank Bob.
Put a master plan, that's where we're at.
Yeah, you know, there's some money for the master plan, but we're not there yet, so.
That's 10% boost, sir.
The devil pick up the budget based on the large numbers of, in your fuel sales is based on luck that we don't have forest fires, luck that we do, and the instability of relying on forestry policies about how they fight fire and where they fight fire from. It really affects us.
Because the fires and we'll go into our Creston Valley Fire for.
Yeah.
Thank Bob.
It's warmed up, last up, ready to go.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. Thank you, Chair. So we'll start with the fourth quarter reports at off 2023. Our fire related calls, which include a bulk of calls there, hazmat, wildland urban interface, open burning, outdoor fire structure fires, technical rescue vehicle fires. So we had 30 of those calls for that fourth quarter 2023. 85 medical, 17 motor vehicles, 31 public assist. So we ended the year with 672 calls for service from the Creston Valley Fire Service there. Added in this new chart, this historic, so quarter by quarter going back to 2022. So it just shows our quarter over quarter call volume, trending up with that dotted line there. The reason I put the average response time in there is I mean, it's a good number to keep an eye on. But it also, I think, helps in like making sure that the public understands, the type of service that we offer. We are paid on call, service. The firefighters are responding from their homes or place of businesses, and that does affect the response time. And I know we definitely get questioned about it, especially when there's a bigger incident. It's like I called 911 and it took this long and all that kind of stuff. So in Creston, we're looking at just under 11 minutes. In Windle, just under 15. Canyon Lister, just under 18 minutes. I don't have any data for West Creston of the fourth quarter, just based, there was no calls out of that hall for the fourth quarter.
Can I ask a question on response time as we go, if it's okay, through the chair? So, say it's internal operations, house fire, you want to go in, is your response time captured when you have a full crew of 8 or whatever you need? Or is it arrival of the first major apparatus, or is it arrival of the first person even kind of assess what's going on?
Yeah, it's first major apparatus with personnel, and that could be usually it's a minimum of like 4 personnel on that.
And you can start hosing down the fire.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So like a pickup truck with 1 person doesn't count. It's that first apparatus. Yeah.
I should know that.
Yeah.
It's on this.
It's all good. Good question. Yeah. So and response time varies. Time of day. Canyon Lister is a much more rural area. Whereas Windle proper is much more compact, and so those affect things. I mean, West Creston is even more rural, right? So those definitely affect those response times. Just some staffing numbers. So our paid on call firefighters and full-time staff right now, our numbers are at 60. That includes 5 work experience firefighters. We have room for 6. And as far as the work experience program goes, it's working well, benefiting us. I've got there's 2 who are be leaving us by the end of the month for career jobs. We're one's confirmed in Kelowna, the other one has some choices between Vernon and Abbotsford, so he hasn't decided yet. And right now, the recruitment period is open, so that we can refill those spots and get ourselves back up to those levels. Canyon Lister Fire Department had an electrical upgrade, and that was completed by the end of fourth quarter. So Fortis came in and upgraded the pole. Service job, we had a 200 amp service installed with, a transfer switch for generator protection. Some public engagement events over the fourth quarter. So our firefighters did a infant CPR choking course for one of the new parent classes. Creston Valley Youth Network is trying to, likes us to be involved in events. So they did flag football and they had their Apple Festival. We did our Halloween safety stop at the Creston Emergency Services building. The Yakanuki Canoe Walk. The firefighter visit for birthdays, so just a couple of firefighters took a fire truck out. It was a 16-year-old, I believe, and actually I think the party happened here So then we came and came with the fire trucks. Our residential smoke alarm education maintenance, and so, we do have a small supply of smoke alarms that we can put out into residents and then help those change batteries, install that kind of stuff.
Chair, can I ask a question on that point? East Shore, what we managed to do, well, one, we got Home Hardware's donated smoke alarms and either through Great Creek Store or sometimes it's, Coconut Chalets, not the resort, but someone, Paul or someone has coordinated that, but also we've done the, fire extinguisher recharge. Have you thought of having one of those? Where I think it's out of Cranbrook, the person will come and he'll test and look at fire extinguishers and help people with that. And I think maybe the focus we have on that is so many people have a wood stove and think that a fire extinguisher close to it like ours, and it's in the red maybe. But is that something you've considered?
Well, we definitely field those phone calls for fire extinguishers, and we will help people when it comes to disposal. And my recommendation, what they have, is, so I'll look at that, and yes, I will recommend a contractor to the recharge. We won't do it ourselves. But there's a private business that does that, so I'll recommend that. But really, the recharge almost is equal in price to replacement.
Yeah, cases.
So it kind of depends.
But especially the smaller ones, the higher size.
Yeah, you can butter up, just buy a new one, but we've done it as an event. And if you coordinate it with the smoke alarm thing, then it's the time to get everybody thinking about that as well. Whether you can direct them to a contractor or, because we've dragged the contractor from Cranbrook to Great Creek Store, because that is so much easier as a one-time event.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think that's a good idea. That's something we can definitely look at is because of the events that we do, say hot summer nights, for example.
Yeah.
We could have that fire extinguisher there to offer that, so no, that's a good idea.
Traditionally annually, is there not Fire Prevention Week that goes on, which is a massive education reminder program to the public to carbon dioxide? You would want to throw extinguishers in on that. It's a good idea to double touch people. I mean, throwing all this information annually to people is better served if you can split it up into chunks, but that Fire Prevention Week is obviously the place that a lot of these things are covered as well, correct?
That's correct. Fire Prevention Week happens in October in the fall, and there's a very dedicated message across the country as to, here's the fire safety topic we're talking about. So lots of material is generated. We book time in the classrooms to get into the schools and get that to the kids. Just get it out on our social media stuff, platforms, and those kind of things. Something we're working on for this year is, a structured public education sessions. So offering free sessions at the fire hall for the public on those different topics. And so, utilizing our work experience firefighters, they get now a chance to interact and, give a lesson plan. And so we're looking at that as more, maybe start off quarterly with the goal to maybe get to monthly. So yeah, finishing off the year, Christmas hampers, it was an excellent event, huge event. Christmas caroling, so we, went out in, the firefighters in West Creston coordinated with the Candy Cane Lane celebrations out there. We went through Canyon Lister this year, Arrow Creek, Windmill, to, through town and in through Yakanuki. Participated at the Yakanuki Christmas party. I was fortunate enough to be one of the judges for the Christmas tree decorating contest, so that was fun. And then the graduating class at the high school this year asked for a first responder volleyball game to raise some money for their graduation ceremonies and stuff. So police, fire, I think some ambulance, conservation officers all participated in that and got butts kicked by boys and girls. So So that's my fourth quarter report. Is there any other questions or comments?
Thanks. So I did kind of have three other general areas of questions. So the one, chatted with Nora a little bit about, because she's handing different things off to Dan. One of them is first responders, new bylaw, separate bylaw. Tom Newell in the regional district office in Nelson's looking at that right now. It's taking a little while, 5 or 6 or 7 years. What I thought is Tom getting this kind of report to have a more full understanding of the categories of how you sort what you respond to, what you don't, and what areas you respond to it. Because it'd be great, I mean, I can pass this on to him, but is anyone in your office or town been talking to Tom Newell about, all these nice breakdowns? Is it a lift assist, is it this, is it that? Even just sending him the report.
Sure, I can reach out to Tom and make sure that he has any and all information.
Because I want him to see where there's revenue opportunity, and again, Nora and I just had 5 minutes to chat about it, like you guys are able to get, if you're using extrication tools, you're able to get revenue. If it's in a service explicitly, I guess we're not able to get revenues, we might be undercutting our own opportunity. I want this new bylaw that's filling the gap in area A to maximize your opportunity to apply for funds as well as coordinators. So anyway, Tom could use this, that was the first point. Second, if I can, we've rolled the contracts, extended the Canyon Lister and Window Lakeview contracts another year, because there's quite a bit between language and responsibility and all this office of the fire commissioner stuff. When I look at some of your sheets, and it's kind of interesting, you show like for Canyon Lister, Window, or Town, revenue versus expenses, kind of a crude cut, it's a nice sheet to see, and it suggests that revenue for the rural services exceeds expenses, and that's not something you want to say, because there's so much in both of those line items, right? But what I'm hoping is when we see the new contract and adjusted amounts up, down, or sideways, that I'll be able to understand a chart like this better, what is revenue and what's an expense. Also, Office of the Fire Commissioner stuff. And again, last week we had this great briefing from, is it Brian or not the Dominion Fire Commissioner, BC Fire Commissioner said, oh, it's cost neutral. And so we can appoint anyone in the regional district to be the contact, and they will phone up and say, hey, we need an investigation, we need an inspection, and somebody will show up and it'll all get done. Not gonna happen for you guys. So, and I have a third question. So just super briefly, is there an easy answer? Do you see it as cost neutral? Because you're gonna be obliged to do some inspections and you're gonna be obliged to do some investigations in rural areas. Potentially, or where are we at? Are you gonna get money for that if you say you think you should do those investigations?
Okay. I'm gonna back that up, because I'm not quite sure what the first question was. The first comment was about the revenue.
Yeah, this is misleading perhaps to.
It is, well, it's what the numbers are. Misleading or not. So like this year, for example, Canyon, or sorry, 2023, the fire services had significant wildfire revenues. And that revenue, that's being written out of Canyon Lister, for example, a chunk of it goes back into the service, but a chunk was also kept through another bylaw that's agreed with for your sprinkler protection units.
Yes.
So, while that's where the numbers show up in bookkeeping, that's not necessarily where the numbers are gonna see, that's just our numbers. So that revenue far exceeding the expenses, not left to the service. We're writing a check right now, actually, as we speak, to the RD for all that revenue, after take out all the expenses, I think it's about 135,000. That's gonna go to the RD, and now that money gets split into Canyon Lister reserves and into that
Stabilization fund, essentially.
Well, the RD has that.
Well, it'll go to rural admin, some of it. Canyon Lister's different because they bought the unit first.
Yeah.
I understand it's complex.
Yeah.
This chart makes it look simplistic.
But
It doesn't make you look good. necessarily, not that you wanna look good or bad. I'd like this to be my.
I'm just being very clear, that money doesn't stay with the town. The difference there is written right back to the RDF for expenses.
Okay, and then on the additional new expense, as I'm still thinking about the rural areas, is the office of the fire commissioner gonna place expectation of you because you're municipality to go over and above in rural areas, or do you even know yet?
I think probably the short answer is don't know. I actually just had a group presentation here. Or the department here hosted the fire chief zone 4 meeting, and our representative from the fire commissioner was out on the one evening.
Yep.
You know, view updating the world. So I went to attend. What's interesting is that the entire Fire Services Act, the new Fire Services Act, that has all the requirements for, you know, what the future will hold in terms of inspection, investigations, is 100% held up because of the regional districts in the province. Because the regional districts in the province feel that they don't want to have to do inspections. Yes. Call what it is. So, so right now, we would never be required legislatively to do any additional work into the rural areas. That legislation, you know, whether or not the province and regional districts of the province agree to something of what the inspections will look like, investigations will look like in outside municipalities to be determined. And then, of course, the regional district at that point, if for example, you're required to provide some level of inspection service, with us providing a contracted service, I'm sure that there's an opportunity for you to come and negotiate that as a contract.
Would you?
Right now, it's not contemplated as far as the labor cost or what that would look like having to say go to. And one thing doing Erickson, but if you're required to do inspections, you're also gonna have to do inspections again.
Yeah.
Which, you know, so there'd be a conversation about what that would look like if the, you know, if the RD was to choose to provide the service to us. Or, I mean, perhaps there's an opportunity where it's done for your regional fire services. I don't know what the requirement, it's a mystery right now.
Same mystery as for us.
Yeah, it's been like 6 or 7 year mysteries.
The other minor question, if I can, if we can somehow take some action, we have apparently only contributed a little bit to the alternative water supply reserve. I think at one point a bit of money went to town, so Stefan would have that stuffed in a side account. Windle Irrigation District has considered upsizing mains and either replacing or upgrading or new hydrants pushing further south along Lower Windle, which is all a plus in my mind. It's just one more point to recharge your tender, refill the tender. So just to put it in people's minds, it would be nice. We kind of missed another construction season. It was a planned project. Just if we can think about how we would like to see a progression of alternative water supplies, ideally through, if we have the pressure and the volume in Windle Irrigation or any other system, through that, as opposed to, you had good ideas, Mike, about small reservoirs or tanks. But can this be the year that we actually have people who need to talk about this, we at least do 1 or 2 sites instead of kicking it down the road?
Well, I think the funding never really got built up for that program.
But we can enhance it.
Yeah, so I mean, originally we negotiated, the town negotiated those contracts, particularly because of the individuals at the table we were negotiating with, you know, would be difficult to fund in the future. We wanted to get a $7,500.
But I was one of those guys.
I wouldn't. But others.
No, that's fine.
That were, you know, were very difficult to.
Bad humor of the
have these
day.
conversations, right?
Yep.
You know, like who needs water to put out a fire? So, I think with the Creston Valley Fire Services master plan, I mean, that's one of the things that should be addressed. There's a lot of pockets within the greater fire protection area, that really lack water, access to water, and especially in terms of maintaining or improving any insurance agreement system. So Canyon Lister is a good example, is that in rural areas, you need to have an alternate water supply that's approved. So, you know, it's gotta be approved, not just water in a ditch. And you gotta be within 5 kilometers. Residents have to be within 5 kilometers. Well, you get a little bit better insurance because of that. or better insurance rate because of that. So, Canyon Lister, if you sat down, you'd have to plan to make sure that you have these improved water supply sites within 5 kilometers of the same would apply for West Creston, the same applies for Wendell, our protection area as well. So, there is a planning exercise to be done, and each of those sites could cost their temporary tanking or a tank in the ground, could be $30,000-$40,000, right up to $500,000 to put in something into a fish bearing stream, for example. But those are all projects that one would work over time to identify priority.
So, and I'll quit, sir, but Chair, you have the master plan and the one-time projects. Can we put that alternative water supply as it's not one time, but as a project on your list, Chair? And then we'll make sure because even if the master plan takes a little while, we've got to be looking at the water issue to feed into the master plan. And I'd love to start budgeting and being opportunistic. If someone's gonna extend a water line and they could upsize it a bit and plant a hydrant or two on it while they're doing it, let's just get ahead.
So my question would be, did you want us to add to the budget specifically for this year, or?
How are we gonna plan for this? Otherwise, I don't see anything coming out of the regional district.
So my question is well, whose role is this? You need to be careful here because I don't want you putting your skills and then get caught up because, well, it's actually an RDCK thing. We need that clear definition. And that's where I think we need to be before we start allocating more money in the budget. I'm all in favor of it, but I want to be clear that we're very clear up front as to what we're trying to achieve and whose role it's going to be.
If I may, and I'm sorry that I take over my fire chief, because you can answer most of this. I think that if I would suggest we do the master plan, and that's part of some of the things that Jared and I have discussed about what will get flushed out of this, is about the stakeholders, what planning, what roles. And so for example, that's a very good point, about whose role that is. And I think that we could really put that as a priority for next budget cycle. This budget cycle, I think for both parties of town and communities, a little higher than what we're used to. So adding to it, I think one more year but I think we'll answer that question. Who's responsible for alternative water supplies? We come up with a plan of how we can have a implementation plan.
I think you have to identify the need because we're relying on you guys to provide the service that the community is relying on for comfort, plus where they can get the insurance. And you guys must handle on that. It's just without it being identified more firmly, we need this here, we should have it by this date. We're not going to.
Within the existing contracts, the capital expenditure.
We'll pay for
capital is
We'll pay. Yeah.
So that part of flushing out who's responsible from the plan perspective.
And additional to what's going on too is that there has been an application of the Channel residence area in Wendell Lakeview to get to increase the boundary for service to their area, and that was stick handled in a black zone for months, but now Tom Dool is working with that, so that's going to be a piece of information that will be relevant to this future discussion.
It's going to go through a week today. It's on our board agenda for next Thursday. We saw it yesterday, and we're moving ahead. We're not moving ahead with any fire hydrants down there. We have potential. The boundaries being expanded. I'd hate to not inject 20,000 more and upsize the pipe through a hydrant in, if we could. If it made sense.
I think this is a presentation that the chief can put together, bring back what alternative water supplies, and then that would inform this discussion.
This chief
here.
Well,
Bring something back.
Yeah, our chiefs around here.
Yeah, he's couple months, he'll bring something back for you, and then that'll inform that discussion moving forward. That's a good place to start.
Moving on, you'll have your PowerPoint on there.
Yeah, so I just put together a presentation, for budget for 2024. And, I think it's, we'll just start at the beginning here. I mean, our process, we look at the legal requirements, the asset management, both from the fire hall and fire trucks, and it's a collaborative effort with the regional district and the municipal fire department, because there is that relationship, RD handles the capital, we look after the operations, but it's closely tied. There's revenue from the regional district and from the province of BC. And so that revenue, after all the expenses are paid, goes back into those services appropriately. The services that we provide, and I'll highlight some of those, but, fire protection, road rescue, first responder, medical, fire inspections, and public education. Fire inspections, are not done though in the regional district area, that is strictly for within the municipal boundaries. So, our request for service, like I mentioned, my fourth quarter, 672 total. Just a point of note there, 72 motor vehicle incidents, and 27 of those happened outside of that fire protection area. So, Director Jackman, you're referring to that bylaw and how you're looking at that, reviewing that. Well, that bylaw covers, that area. We go all the way to the top of the summit, we go north to Coakley, all the way to Ryan Station, east to Gap, Highway 21, is that boundary. And so anything outside of that fire protection area, or where there's no fire protection contract, we're acting on behalf of the province. We get some funding back for that, and that's accounted for in the revenues for that service. Any questions about the areas or the call types? So specifically for Canyon Lister, a total of 83 calls for service. Those aren't necessarily all within Canyon Lister. It's Canyon Lister's fire service and responding to incidents within the Creston Valley. Okay, and then it's broken down in there. Public assists include the BC ambulance requests for lift assists. It could be lines down, it could be an RCMP assist, or burning complaints. That's where those are covered in there. My phone was going off this morning because today is a good venting index day. And so we're getting multiple reports of people starting their burn piles up today, because venting index is good, but that could generate some burn complaints. Any questions with that, Tierney? So the next one in the Wendell Lakeview area, 50 calls for service. Same sort of breakdown there. Jackman, okay. West Creston, 38 total, same sort of breakdown. Dr. Vandenberg. Sure. So the levels of service. So the next slide shows. So now I'm going to go through each level of service and talk a little bit about the expense and the revenue. This first one talks about it as a whole. So we're looking at these numbers represent looking at this fire service, this Creston Valley Fire Service, and the expense and revenue for what we provide. So again, public education, there's fire inspections in there, fire suppression, fire investigations. And then there's the fire service administration. So we have full-time supervising or supervision. We got fire hall maintenance, apparatus checks all the fire halls in all the areas. And then, having the work experience program comes with an expense, a cost, and so that's in there as well. Some of the revenue that's generated, within the fire service, so new this year, College of the Rockies is moving the fire academy to Creston. And so we've negotiated a contract because they're looking for some supports from the fire service with that. And so the different areas, all the different areas, including the town of Creston, share in that revenue. So there's a new revenue stream that has come in that will be proportionate equal or
Proportionate.
Yeah, proportionate. Yakanuki, so there's a fire service, we provide fire protection, Yakanuki. That service, again, is, there's a separate contract. And right now it's primarily through the Canyon Lister Service, that defined area, area B. But there's another revenue and it's, I think in the past it was about 14,000. And, we're looking at it, it's on your agenda coming
Yeah,
up.
to shift that.
It's gonna shift because Yakanuki would like all of their IR lands with fire protection. Yeah, within, so then they've got lands in all areas, A, B, and C. And so we've, looked at a new contract, new service map, new cost, and that's gonna be taken. And again, it would be serviced from the Creston Valley, not just Canyon Lister. Wildfire deployments, like Mike was saying, it was, about 135,000, in profit. So after all expenses, that's gonna go back to the regional district from those deployments. And how the regional district splits that off is, I guess, more your business than my business. And then just, on the other side of things with the shared facility, just so you're aware, ambulance pays their share of the cost of that building. So it's a regional district, you contribute to that building, but, any, shared costs that they participate in is you're seeing that benefit as well. It's all, the contracts include revenue as well as the expenses. It's all. Is there any questions there? Okay.
One, I'm gonna throw this out here and see if it sticks on the wall, but when you talk to, about your wildfire deployment, you're responding to wildfire. And one of the initiatives that we have in RDCK is wildfire mitigation. What we have where it's managed by a group that kind of hands off. It seems to me that when it comes to wildfire mitigation and education, I think that should be a fire department requirement. And I can see his hand going up here, so I'm just gonna leave it at that, see if it's sticking to the wall.
Right, can I comment on that?
Yeah, it looks like it's sticking to the wall.
Okay, I was the one, I think, I don't know if anyone was as noisy as me a few years ago, I thought this needed to be moved out of regional district fire services into a planning function, very specific. Our hierarchy in our fire services, regional chief, deputy chiefs, who's training who, who's where, who's what, who's with Creston, who's not with Creston, who'd rather be with Castlegar, whatever. There's been so many conversations, so much shuffling the deck. I said, look, this mitigation is far too important. It kept getting pushed to the corner. And I said, it's a planning function. It's got to be steady, constant, relentless. People like John Jackson and working with Dan Seguin. He doesn't go around in a red truck. He doesn't have to get pulled. He does. He gets pulled off for different things. But he needs to spend a lot of time focused on that. Dan needs to just focus. And for him, Chris Johnson, focus as a planning function. Get ready for this and give us the information how we're going to ramp up and be successful. I felt within our regional fire services, there was too much other transition, change and turmoil. And I'm still behind that assessment. That is a planning function. And so I don't know how town is handling those kind of long-term climate issues, mitigation issues and stuff like that. Does that rest with planning or does it rest with emergency response? And it's not response. I mean, it is planning, response, recovery, mitigation, the whole cycle. But we needed to have a different focus, I thought, starting a few years ago, because we were leaving all these wildland urban interface plans and stuff randomly want to get finished and the next one to be 5 years before we saw it, and then they're out of date.
So you're saying that
Leave
you
it
like
for
the way it is?
For the RD, I think we're more efficient than we were trying to do it through emergency services.
So, I can't speak to the regional district and how they're, gonna operate that mitigation side of things. or something like that. I know the town of Creston is, you know, developing an emergency management program. And, you know, the plan is that, yeah, that is a separate function will be a separate function from the fire department, and that response model. So that's just like Director Jackman said, that seems to be the way that things are going. In saying that, what, you know, as part of our UBCM Community Resiliency Investment, like the CRI grants, for Fire Smart programs,
Yes.
which we are partnered with the regional district bank. There was a new requirement last year for committees to be formed at a regional level to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And so we were able to start that committee with, you know, Town of Creston, Regional District, Yakinuki, we've got private contractors, and we've got community forest, we've got the Wildlife Center representation, and then BC Wildfire, and then some different divisions of forestry that can help with funding and different things like that. So we're meeting regularly and having those discussions as this larger collaborative group, and our focus is on identifying the priorities for those fuel mitigation projects in the valley, because Yakinuki has some, Town of Creston has some, Regional District has some, but there's definitely overlap there. And so we're now all at the table talking about those, and we've also got departments at the table saying like, oh, well, we've got some grant money for this, or we can help with this. So it's really coming together nicely to then start prioritizing what those fuel mitigation projects look like locally, right here. And I know that the former regional district chief, Nora Hannon, she's moved into a mitigation position, and she sits on that board. We just had a meeting a couple of weeks ago. She was there. Her and I had some really good discussions. So I think that I feel it's positive going forward.
That's separate from the Emergency Preparedness Committee.
That's right.
We have so many provincial pieces of legislation that we have to answer to as well.
Not going away either. So continue.
Yeah, so just in my presentation here for Keep Going Road Rescue, you know, I mentioned the area, I mentioned the reimbursement from the province, and then there's revenue from that Jaws of Life bylaw that, you know, we're looking at, the regional district is looking at now. And you know, the expense associated with that is about wages to respond to those calls, and then there's annual training that needs to happen, it needs to be maintained. And training is not it's not cheap, you know, costs money. We've got to bring people in. We try to do as much as we can in-house, but it's a combination of both. There's obviously equipment costs. That equipment is operated out of the Creston station, you know, requires annual maintenance, and it's very, very expensive, you know, to operate and maintain. So the same, you know, again, same kind of things going forward for 2024. As far as revenue and expenses goes, we don't anticipate any much difference there. I want to say that, you know, the EMCR, Emergency Management Climate Readiness, which is the branch of government that looks after road rescue, you know, we were getting reimbursements on these road rescue tasks in the upline areas, like Canyon, Window, and West Creston. And with the Canyon Lister contract and how we're trying to regionalize things, they have their policy is that if there's a fire protection agreement in place, they don't provide any sort of funding. And so they have paid close attention to these contracts. And so we are not getting as much as, say, we were in the past because of that. But we still have up to, 30 calls a year, almost half of our calls are outside of the fire protection area. So we may see a little reduction in revenue there from them, but it all depends on the call volume, where those calls happen. Our first responder program, kind of touched on it, really, the expense there is wages. The revenue, just back to the expenses, it doesn't factor in any indirect costs, I don't factor in a percentage for vehicle maintenance or fuel or anything like that, it's pretty low wages. That service is only provided in certain areas, so the town of Creston, Erickson, and Arrow Creek receive that area, or receive that service. And those areas, through those contracts, pay a share of that expense, and that's where the revenue comes from. That's what we're not. I guess it's important, I wanna make sure you guys understand though that, the relationship that we have on the ground with ambulance is very close, especially being in the city building. And so, we definitely help out with lift assists, and we have the ability to go out to those other areas if help is needed. So it may not come in as a first responder medical call in Canyon Lister, but we may get a call and show up for an assist and have to help with CPR. So, I know that, at an operational level, talking with Chief Guthrie, we want to start having those discussions and perhaps look at, what does that first responder program look like, the entire service area. So stay tuned for that. The next slide there talks about the budget. Director Jackman kind of pointed that out earlier. So I've got just a simple chart there that shows the fire service as a whole. Okay, so that's everything combined with revenue and expenses, and the revenues come from different sources: regional district, Creston taxpayers, those revenues that I talked about through road rescue, Culture Rockies, anything like that, wildfire deployments. The asterisks there for Canyon Lister and Wendell, those numbers are just strictly from your financial plan that I got off of, from the regional district website. And so, yeah, exactly, that's the financial plan. And so, strictly estimates. Any questions with that? I hear your concern of how straightforward it is.
So people can understand that there's a building, there's apparatus, there's borrowings, there's capital upgrades. It's kind of cool to see it. It looks like there's a lot of cash flowing, but it's simplistic. But then the contract, the major part of the difference of that's what I want to see is been deferred one more year to really re-examine that.
Yeah.
So being a very patient individual, another year, that's not.
Yeah, so moving on, I just want to make sure everyone's aware of the budget requests that the service, has put out there. So we've talked about the fire service master plan. I brought that to you guys earlier, early 2023. Our training ground carryover. Training grounds projects are 100% by donation. There is contributions to the operating side of things where the regional district and town of Creston is operating. The next gen 911 was a UBCM grant that was 100% grant funded. The town of Creston received 45,000. We've been working with the regional district and the GIS updates that need to happen there, and so I believe there's about a $9,000 request that's going to be coming from the regional district. We're going to support that with those grant funds. Then I've got some other plans for the next gen 911 upgrades.
So Jared, how do you use the GIS system?
Me operationally, I use the mapping function that's online. Provides
Get you
me
to
with-
the address.
That's, yeah,
Google doesn't do that for you?
yeah, well, the GIS map that the regional district has just has a little more information, you know, it highlights the properties itself, but, yeah, not used much.
All right, thanks.
But if there's a declaration of a state of emergency, very specific maps, every address, more data that gives your guys in the field what doors they have to knock on, who's up a driveway and what goes nowhere, what's force.
Did they do that?
Oh, our guys always produce maps for every
No,
event.
no. The function of the fire department in an emergency, go out and knock on doors.
A tactical evacuation, we could, yeah, the evacuation, you know, notices are typically in a, you know, emergency management function, and so depending on what's going on, it may not be the fire department necessarily.
So really critical to fire service, they would entire dispatch center using GIS.
Okay, and you need the map whether you evacuate or not. Yep,
Yeah,
okay.
100%, no, it's all, that's not part of the upgrades of the GIS, needs to turn out to new next gen 911 systems, that next technology. But all that GIS mapping is that's the embedded part into the dispatch centers that they utilize, Google Maps.
So do you access the public version of the GIS or do you have to?
Your ECK's GIS department sends CAD files to the dispatch center, very specifically what properties are covered, like all that.
Specific information, you're not allowed to share public.
Yeah, it's not even allowed to find public, so, but that's sent to the CAD file and updated on a regular basis. No different than, you know, you see assessment and the RD trading piece of property information. So that's a very exciting, so while we don't use it operationally in the fire truck, GIS is incredibly important for this one.
Except when there's an evacuation. You are, then.
We are,
So as
that,
a prepared.
your emergency map, GIS has a function as a service, you know, does, certain things for emergency management, and that's, you know, as well as, you know, each of our town of Creston, we are part of the GIS service. We pay, into that for our planning department uses the GIS. But again, when the fire department, I want to make it really clear, it's really critical, to the whole entire dispatch system.
Yeah, the time we got this.
Yeah, so, an operational budget request, for a fire service support supervisor, and it's about supervision. And so providing that supervision for the web, and we're looking at, making sure we have 7 days a week coverage for supervision for responding to those incidents.
So, and not trying to be disrespectful at all. This is the sort of thing that I want to start seeing a business case on. I want to see the build up as to what the outcomes are, why, the who, and that sort of thing. This is just a one line item that says we're looking at a supervisor, 75,000. I'm saying this because I know that there's people listening. The lack of business cases for these asks are extremely difficult to deal with and refer back to see how the metrics are performing and that sort of thing. There's no metrics here, there's nothing. So I'm just pointing that out, and not meant to be anything that you need to answer on it. But lack of a business case is not good in these sorts of things.
Just if I may, so for the municipal budgeting process, which is provided in the budget process that the council goes through, the impact to your fire services budget, and probably what's not here is what the actual impact to your contracts were, and your contracts were impacted by the CPI. So that's just so that was the only
Issue.
So of how that was adjusted, so that there is some new revenue, we also, which hasn't, and it's not clearly defined here from a business case perspective, but we also signed a contract with Colorado Rockies, which also introduced a little bit of responsibility to the department, so yeah, the business case was that's that, and I think the point you're making is that, you would like to see that
Standard.
Yeah. Yeah, so what we did right here, and so I want us to say, what there's nothing done for the
Flood.
yeah, but just to jump to what your impact is within Why video, that's why I talked to Mr. here, that was only within the CPI. Right, so there's no special requirement to come in and ask for more money within like this.
Sure.
Oh, no problem. I wanna make sure that you guys have all the information you need to make decisions, so moving forward, just on the capital side of things, a generator for the emergency services building. The generator, was taken out of the original scope of the project. And we were able to, obtain a grant, $150,000 grant, this year to then pursue that project, going forward. And so, that total cost, and it's a natural gas generator, $264,000 is a big cost. Includes the transfer switch, and the labor and the generators. Yeah,
How many, through the chair, how many KVA, any idea?
300.
So it's to run the building.
Yeah,
We're
That's-
running a double wide ATCO trailer at Crawford Bay Clinic for 300, and I've been tracking that, and they are gonna spend the 300. Can't believe it. Anyway, good job.
thank you. Yeah, it's. Our radio communications inside the building, with our handheld radios is not great because of the concrete structure. Something that wasn't, planned for in the original design, so we've got a plan to make some improvements in the building to do that, and some equipment, to make that happen. And then the last two for confined space equipment and the plasma vent system, relate to the College of the Rockies, contract. And so the, what they're asking for and is, that's what we're providing. So purchasing some equipment and then adding a plasma vent drop for the diesel exhaust so they can.
That is their additional drop. You mentioned.
That was my question, what is that?
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, so just did it, we just gotta add some plumbing to the system. And we've got all the parts and pieces to drop it down, so then the truck, for 6 months out of the year, the truck is planned to be parked in the fire hall. That was one of their requests, and so this is to make that happen.
But didn't you have that already built in? I mean, all your apparatus, has a exhaust connector.
Yeah, but the design of it was having the apparatus go, directional. Originally, and so we didn't spend the money to have it like both sides. So you could back it out, it was originally designed, cause we didn't have the COTR at the time. Of just, okay, this is what we have, and this is what we need, okay? And we knew we could always add to it if we wanted to change the configuration or add apparatus, but we thought, well, that could be 5, 10, 15 years down the road. Well, College of the Rockies comes in the following year, the same year we move in. Be like, well, we want to park our truck here. Okay, well, we didn't plan for that, so. Yeah. So that's that.
The other question? I thought you just missed Bill. What do we need to look?
I'm a bad yes, that's the branding.
Hey,
So that's the end of my presentation, unless there's any questions.
For all my scribbling. Thanks.
thank you, Jared. I recommend about a 5-minute, we'll get back. Yeah, quite a bit to do that.
There's still people online, but they're not actually.
The crest, sit down, pushing together. There's a welcome remarks, opportunity for CK.
In the parking lot here or at the info center, because if I need to get up to date with what's going on, I can connect internally, download lots of reports, and it doesn't matter where I go, I can read them. Whereas if I go to a restaurant trying to, like if you go to Buffalo Trails, provincial counter BC for free. That's what it's called, but it's slow. You want to,
Reconvene. Like, you have a special need. I don't.
he has an accessibility issue, Chair.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have that password. Does anyone have the?
It doesn't show on mine, it doesn't
Here,
review.
just automatic.
Automatic.
Yeah, let's connect automatically.
And I'm looking for it too.
Yeah, sorry, Roger, it's one of those.
Staff, would staff over there have any help? No, maybe I can go there myself. Sorry, Mayor. Haven't been able to connect all
I
night.
use Easter egg.
Yeah, and you, no, when I go on settings on the internal, it doesn't show the password, it shows all kinds of IPv4 DNS. But I don't see the password.
Through the chair, is it Director Tierney needs access to the?
I've got it, Joe.
Internal.
Okay.
And Vandenberg.
Thank you.
You guys, no,
Hopefully,
pass it.
all of it. You're not special because I get it easily, or Roger's special because he doesn't.
Yeah.
Right, special.
Anyway, let's get on with our, recreation facility, financial plans.
through the chair, I think, Joe, are you sharing?
Chris, is it okay if I share my screen?
I think she's expecting you to.
Oh, okay, I see her screen on mine right now, so that's.
Christine gave up on us.
I think she's recording this.
No,
Yeah.
she's doing other work. Lots to do, it's agenda week, right?
Without the brackets.
There we go.
Thank you, Craig.
So through the chair,
But
what is the group's preference here? Would you like me to go through the high level of the report that you would have received yesterday? Or do you want to just ask questions about it?
in the interest of time, we'll do what's most expedient, so that's my suggestion.
So the first one is about a 0% increase, and like I did my own math. My math says because of our overhead, we'd have to cut staff on the programming side by 20% to keep the requisition at zero increase. That's my math. Very impractical if that was the director's question. I won't explain how I got there, but that was a question here. I don't know if you actually tried to analyze how much would we have to shrink our level of service to hold our requisition at last year's level.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, so through the chair, we did provide some options at the bottom in the background. So we're still in a, I think the big thing is that we're still in a funny spot. Number one is what we know from last year. So for example, I'll tell you what we know. We know that our revenues exceeded our budget from last year. That's good. What we know is that we didn't operate our aquatic center at what our pre-pandemic hours were. We haven't done that since February of 2020. So what we don't know is what operating our aquatic center at pre-pandemic hours, what its impact on revenue would be. We do know what its impact on expenses are. Like that's the part that we can actually budget out. So we don't know how much new use we would get over the use that we are getting, although we would expect that we would see it. I would say that right now, from our analysis, like definitely the fitness center is driving our user fee our user fee revenue. So that is clear. And what's also clear, this is a very small picture, but in the first 15 days of January, we know that our revenue and user fees is trending ahead of where we were at the beginning of 2023. And that's beyond just the rate of increase to the user fees. So that would suggest an increase in numbers. So those are the pieces that we know. So what we did do is we said, okay, what happens if we reduce or alter our programming plans? So we have a number of pieces there, and we think it could be any part of this, or it could be all of them. Right now, our goal, our budget contains the expenses in order, for example, in particular, to open the pool to pre-pandemic hours as of Q2, so that would be as of April. We also know that that might be difficult. We don't know if we'll be able to have that staffing still at this point in time in order to do that. So that, we said, we could delay what our budgeting is in order to get to that. But we do need to understand that if we don't have, for example, that piece in the budget, whatever we put into the budget now is what we can actually reach. So if we say that we only want, Craig, I just can't remember, what's the percentage of hours right now that we're at? I think we're still below, we're at the 50 or?
We're at 43 of 75 hours per week that we were pre-pandemic, so it's just over half.
Yes, I was gonna say about 50%. So that we know. If we don't budget those salaries, then we don't actually have potentially the ability to get there, even if we get the stuff. So like, this is the conundrum. This is a little bit of the conundrum that we're in. So when I look at programming pieces, I think that's very difficult, because I think if we just, oh, I'll put my phone on. Go away, Gary. Sorry, that's not you, Gary. It's another Gary. Boy, that's loud. Sorry. Programming is what actually brings in revenue. Like, that's what actually generates people using the facility, which is why we have it. So if we want to get to zero, we could delay the full staffing of the aquatic fitness center. We could say, for example, right now, don't target until May. We'll get a little bit of savings in that. The May for the aquatic center might even be more realistic than what we created the budget on. And I just watched the back of Craig's head to make sure I'm not saying anything absolutely insane. The other piece is that, sorry, I'm just making sure I'm scrolling right. Sorry, I went too far. Is option one, and Director Jackman, this makes me cringe. I know it's probably making you cringe, but is reduce the contribution to reserve. So what this allows, and this is the only reason I would say this now, right now, we do have, reserves. We know that we would at least be able to get through 2024 and 2025 funded for what we have on the books. So we know we can do those 2 years. It would mean some decisions in 2025, but we also know that we will have better information as we're still waiting on the overall regional district asset management and asset management evaluation. It would have no loss to potential the way that we're budgeting service levels. It would also allow us to sit down with the committee and talk about what are those service levels that we want to have at the community complex. I think because those two things are definitely interrelated, budget and the service level. So what are the opening hours that we want? What is the best use of the spaces that we have? Those kinds of things we could definitely have discussions on, but when it comes to, if it's in particular about, we want to control budget costs, we want to do that in a way that is thoughtful, I would suggest that reducing the contribution to reserve would allow that to be done in a thoughtful way this year. And in a way that you could still have impacts on the budget. So for example, if what we had is 100% of the aquatic center, like that operating model, if you remember, like just pre-pandemic, we increased the operations of the pools on Tuesday and Thursday mornings, for example. We could review that and do that in a thoughtful way so that we all know why we're making the decision and we can communicate that clearly to the public. So that's the thoughts that are in here. Welcome any feedback.
Go ahead, Director Vandenberg.
Hi, Joe, and thank you for this. This opens up my world a little bit to better understanding what the type of challenges that you have. And it's not a waste of time to put this together. I appreciate it keenly. And my question was, how will it affect our level of service with the zero budget? And you brought forward some things to consider. I greatly appreciate that. I can't pull it up on my screen right now because I can't get internet. And so I appreciate that. I do have a couple of questions in terms of some of the offerings. And I think it is around the swimming, reduced planned swimming lesson programs for children. Is that because of staff? You would alter the staff hours to cut that back on? I do know that the elementary school has a number of sessions coming up to learn how to swim. But I understand that there's a fee charged for that. But this is about staffing, I'm thinking. And then the other part is on there, and I'm looking at youth groups. So youth groups, youth camp, swim lessons, I believe they need to stay. Adult fitness, how much of that, how much is that subsidized? Like, what are we talking there in adult fitness?
I don't know what that specific number is. Craig, do you have your budget open just to look at that?
Through the chair, I talk about adult fitness in general, and I think that this budget represents, as Joe mentioned, that fitness is driving our business right now, and I think the hours of operation in the fitness center are, I would say based on what the community's given us, they're insufficient, so we're open for 6 hours on Saturday and Sunday, and then on stats we're open for 4 hours. It condenses and compresses the schedule, and we're very busy in fitness. So the adult fitness question is about adult fitness offerings and programs. I can't tell you how they're subsidized because there's different levels of subsidization based on the program and the type and the number of people. But basically what that is saying is if we reduce the program adult offerings, then we could pull, maybe $20,000 out of the taxation.
And you can roll your screen to option 3, just as a reminder. To see if there's anything that jumps out at me.
So through the chair, that deferred capital there's even in the capital plan, there's a line that has new washroom, outdoor washrooms. As low hanging fruit would be something we haven't had for a couple of years, and then if we wanted to take $250,000 and move it to 2025, that's an option.
Okay, thank you. I'll leave this, go ahead, but thank you for this.
So I did a little different calculation, kind of what you said, Joe, in my mind. If you reduce programming, we reduce revenues, but we know roughly, what we pay for out of, all the capital cost of this, borrowing stuff like that is out of taxation, and under the revenue, we only have a partial cost recovery, and kind of really crude estimates on staff involved in programming versus looking after the box, cleaning, maintenance, whatever stuff has to be done. And my crude calculation was if we seriously wanted to have zero tax lift for this year, it'd be cut programming staff by 20%, and it has to be targeted maybe in the higher subsidy areas, which I'll touch in a minute. And then next year, if you wanted zero, you dig a hole based on inflation, and the next year you dig another hole. So it just cut 20% this year, 6% next year, 4% the next year, 2% the next year. That's a path. Not making a contribution to reserve. I will vote against that vehemently, because look at this roof repair. Blew a $400,000 hole in our reserve. You can't predict the next unexpected thing, but our reserves are poor. They're low, very low level. So that doesn't make sense. Deferring capital, well, yeah, if you're gonna inflate the costs and stuff like that as well. But if we're going to try and take a zero-based budget approach, it's gonna be a cut in services. In terms of the gain from what service you pick on to cut, ice and pool are the highest subsidy without a doubt. Dry floor activities will be the cheapest, the lowest incremental cost. Yeah, there's some maintenance and custodial stuff involved, and there's always front counter costs, but the ice of the pool is what costs the most money. They have the highest subsidies. We understand that. So when I say cut 20% of programming, you might have to cut 30% of the pool, 30% of the ice, and 10% of the dry floor or something to make that up. But it's not a path I want to go down as a short-term, or I'm going to be crude again, knee-jerk kind of reaction. Yes, we can have the conversation, as Joe said. What are the service levels we want to consider at this facility? Because we've had the conversations, a group comes and says, oh, we want to swim early in the morning. And another group says, well, we want to swim after work. And another group says, we want more family swim hours on the weekend, especially Sunday. The only reason we haven't been even talking about that is we can barely keep the pool open for the historical hours program. I'm fine with having the conversation. What do we want to do or not do with this facility? Not fine with options 1 or 3. And if you seriously want to do option 2, to me, it would be a massive reduction or it's trivial. And you'd have to be prepared to do it every year. And that's not the reason this facility is here, is to reduce access when you have an extraordinarily high fixed cost to the tax base based on all the borrowing that we still owe for it. You might as well let the public pay incrementally and actually use the place. So it's an interesting exercise. I don't want to see any zero-based budgeting until we better understand fully, is there something we're doing here that incrementally is extraordinarily expensive, and start focusing only on those areas surgically if we're going to talk about changes or reduction to service levels.
Yeah, and through the chair, the one piece that I just really want to point out is that $146,886 increase in our debenture costs. That amount is almost the entire increase in this draft budget right now. And that's nothing we can do about. And unfortunately, we have, Craig, this was just we have a number of other renewals that are coming up. I'm just trying to remember Daryl's document, but there's a number of other renewals that are going to be coming up here over the next bit. And they're going to be, hopefully interest rates, hopefully we'll start seeing those go down a little bit, but this one happened to come up right at the wrong time. And that was the impact. So just those amounts, as they were coming up earlier, previous years, some of those, that actually drove that cost down. And there were actually decreases in requisition during that time. So now this piece is going up. So the one thing just for the group, this has always been intended to be funded by, that piece was always intended to be funded by requisition. So, and that's another piece. So beyond inflation, those renewals of those debenture costs are coming up as well.
Further, very good discussion. This is the type of budget discussions we need to have all the time, because when I go back out, step back out of this building and people start talking to me, I have knowledge. And I can talk in terms of service level and put it to them. Well, what do you want to see? This is what it's so on and so forth. Thank you for pointing out that debenture cost. You're offering to, at some point in the future, perhaps it's not through budget season, to look at to look closer at our levels of service and what we can and we shouldn't offer based on your suggestions. I would welcome that. And I think that's prudent as directors that we have those conversations. And I agree with Gary that zero based budgeting or reducing it down to zero increase doesn't make sense for a lot of good reasons, to which you pointed out many of them. And but at least we're having this conversation. Because normally it would be, well, here it is, and it's roast that away you go. No, that doesn't work for me. I need to understand what this really means and what our level of service means to our people that are in our community, and what that cost is and how those costs are influenced by things we can control and things we can't control. So this is not a waste of time.
No, and through the chair, I want you to know that we didn't take it like that. In fact, I'm glad, and as Kelly, as I said to you at another meeting, I really appreciated the way you asked the question, because oftentimes we get asked the question as if there's no impact. And it's as if, we could just pull money out and that somehow then also be considering requests later on with no impact. The point of the matter is what oftentimes the public forgets is that every hour that we're open, we are subsidizing their use of the facility. Through the fees and charges policies and those kinds of things, we're trying to make it more transparent. And I just want you to know that our team, in particular, Craig, myself, Tricia, and Tia, have been spending a lot of time revamping these budgets to make sure that we're only counting things once in some cases, and that we know clearly what's inside the budgets, and we're going to continue to do that. And we do welcome that conversation, because it is very important that we understand clearly what the political direction for level of service is, and then that we can clearly show you how those things equate in the budget. So that's appreciated.
I think what's understated here, and it's great that we've done this, it's just the importance of this facility to our community, the variety of uses and the complexity of continuing to deliver those. Those are the type of things that we have this information. It's a little bit easier to explain to others why it is what it is, and I really, again, like Director Vandenberg, I appreciate that. I really don't want to see huge cuts. I know how important some of these programs are. Just a simple one is the children's swimming lessons. I know there's a backlog and it's hard to get swimming lessons because of the number of instructors. If we start cutting those, we probably lose the instructors. We have to work harder to regain what we've lost than if we maintain what we have. So I have a great concern about discontinuing things and then realizing we still need them and our community telling us that. So again, I appreciate that.
Through the chair, the other piece is S201. So that is the regional parks budget. So that is where, in terms of requisition lift, that's, it's a significant percentage, but a small number. So we do want to just highlight a couple of areas just to make sure, because I know that there's been a lot of emphasis from the committee on trying to us investigating parkland for acquisition for the area. So just to note what we have in the budget. I know that Mark is listening as well, because we do talk about this in a number of different ways. So we have in this draft budget a $40,000 increase to capital reserves. So that the $40,000 increase in that contribution would make it $60,000 in 2024. That's as Director Jackman, who's done the most recent purchase in the room. We know that is not what the reserves are at right now. Would not allow us to contribute, but we do have powers in legislation for purchase of regional parkland. And so we have thought about this pretty clearly, in that not impacting requisition when we don't have a firm parkland purchase on the table. But that we do have some ability in this to at least fund 1 year of acquisition if it was to come around. We have got $35,000 for support of consultants and pieces there. You know, we don't have any plans for that money right now, but it's there. That could be shifted to a purchase. It could be much less. But we just have that there. And that 32,645, I do just want to point out, like, right now, our community services fee structure is definitely something that we probably need to look at through the year. This is probably based upon our calculations, you know, that is what staff support and overhead is for this. And I do know that we have spent quite a bit of time this year on trying to help solve some of these issues. But we will be looking at the community services fee this year through all rec across the district, because it really is an allocation method. So I know that, you know, in particular, Gary, Director Jackman, has definitely given me some ideas of how we should probably rethink that. And I will be doing lots of that heavy thinking this year with you. But so that's what that piece is. But just so you know, I do think that if there was something to come across our table between the reserves we have, what we have in this budget, we could probably get through 2024. It would impact any potential thought, like proposals that come across the table at some point, would definitely impact the 2025 going forward.
Director Jack.
Thanks, and I did appreciate in all your information, you showed that the parkland dedication reserve for A, B, and C, and A's got nothing, but that is because we did purchase 28 parcels for almost $3 million. And so you don't feel so bad. Our mortgage on that, principal and interest, is a mere $99,000 a year right now. I think we're protected on our interest rate for a couple more years. I'm just crossing my fingers. And our $218,800 budget just for Area A for 2 parks was forecast to go to almost $260. Carrie's only given it to me, and I've still got to go over stuff, but we're rolling that back to a modest $228,000 annual taxation for Windmill East Shore, just to carry those 2 sites. So it's expensive, but I think we did the right thing on Crawford Creek. Reedale is a legacy park. The ball field there, it's expensive, but you got to be ready to bite the bullet. And the interesting thing through that whole process, I had hundreds of voices in support, it must have been, and a couple of detractors. And a couple of them were like, what are you doing getting rid of our airstrip? Because that's not an airstrip. Even Copley Resort, when Craig was there, recognized the liability of operating a little airstrip. all I got was support essentially, but it's a big bite to the power we have to borrow. You can borrow what you need if you feel you have public support, just get stuff done. So we have, anyway, if the numbers look big, area A is, 85-90% of your tax base, but we're already carrying a $250,000 a year pretty quick, so that's what people ask for.
We're making up for lost time somewhere.
Mm,
Yeah, that's one of the big, the basic problems here, that we have to make up for some lost time.
We couldn't imagine buying the 3 lots on the highway that Goldney Springs used to own before. Would cost, even on floodplain, would cost an absolute fortune right now, let alone the other 25 parcels.
I'd like to move this meeting along. Anything else on this?
Are we directing staff to hold the numbers they've recommended in the draft financial plan going forward to next Friday? Or do we need to try and modify it?
Through the chair, there is that piece about the, what I was talking about this on the phone, right? The piece about the Canada Day event, we want that added to this as well.
The line item.
We could put it in as a line item, as a special ed at $5,000. And so that would represent just about a 3.7% increase in taxation in a year, when CPI is about 6 months.
Or we keep a direction to make an adjustment to reallocate within the existing recommended budget 5K, but I don't think that's worth doing, given the size of our budget, either or. And leave it to your discretion.
You want a motion?
Yeah, I think so. Do we need a motion for that, staff direction?
Yeah, just, I think I think for everyone, it just keeps things clear later on that something is just in there as direction.
I thought that, if I may, I thought that $5,000 is already built in, it's just how you allocate it.
Through the chair, it's in a different service, and Joe and I were talking about how we could just take it out of that service and put it into this service instead of having to transfer.
It's in as one away.
So we could put it right into S224.
Okay, that sounds minimal.
So the direction to staff to add a line item for Partner Canada Day celebrations in the amount of 5K for 2024.
The other direction is just accept this as is.
Yeah, accept this with that addition.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks so much for such a. Well,
Thank you.
Joe heard that. didn't you?
I did.
I move to termination agreement, RDCK Laurel.
I've moved both recommendations as a block for discussion.
Yeah, they're kind of self-explanatory.
Movements of block in committee.
Seconded by Director Tierney, discussion.
Yes, I didn't take notes prior to, because I can't pull it up right now. I'm having a hard time with the internet. 8.3 is the termination agreement or Cootie ban. What does, okay, my questions are, West Creston Fire Hall still remains shared service question mark, financial implications to this. So it's gonna shift over to Creston's responsibility with their agreement. What is the financial implication to me and Area C, et cetera? And how does West Creston Fire Hall fit into this? If West Creston chooses not to have a fire hall in the future, what does that mean? And is there an offering from the Lower Kootenai Band to support West Creston Fire Hall in this? And I don't know that this is the right table to ask, but these are the things that are going through my mind on this shift responsibility.
So can you answer that?
Become a contract area. It's a separate contract, isn't it?
Can anybody answer?
Yeah,
I think
sorry,
Mike's.
but it's going through my mind.
Yeah.
Because it's real for me.
Through the chair, Mike is there. Just don't.
Hi, yeah, sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
Okay, so the shift of agreement from RDCK essentially to our service providers in Creston, the things that jump out to me is we still have first of all, we still have a component of shared service. There's gonna be a cost area C, area B, area A. I don't know what that is. Should be a lateral move, but I don't know what that cost is. So that's the financial implications. And then how does the referendum around West Creston Fire Hall possibly affect this? And the sub question to that is the Lower Kootenai Band wishing to have some influence over the West Creston Fire Hall, because it may have some impact as to how Creston Fire Services will deliver their service? So it's kind of a loaded question.
Through the chair, I can speak to really the second question there with regard to the impact on the electoral process. So in effect, there should be no impact to our process with regards to the upcoming referendum for the West Creston service. Historically, these services have been provided to the so the Lower Kootenai Band isn't a participant in the fire services currently. These services, the fire protection services, have been provided by the RDCK under contract to the Lower Kootenai Band. And in the transferring of operational responsibility for fire services in the Creston Valley to the town of Creston, the termination of this agreement is really moving, the arrangement is moving towards a unilateral arrangement between the town of Creston and the Lower Kootenai Band that won't involve the RDCK at all. So these two recommendations here are really just procedural items to provide effect to that. It was contemplated in the agreement between the town of Creston that this would occur, but there should really be no impact to the upcoming proceedings in the West Creston regarding West Creston, to my knowledge.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor? Oh, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Just that, because that's absolutely correct, that there would be no impact. But what I did want to point out was that Lower Kootenai Band has asked very specifically to add West Creston, that land in West Creston, to the fire protection agreement with the town. And that because it is really critical to them building their
Possibly a center there.
the wellness center. Now, I don't know, I just know that that's what they're asking. So if fire protection was not continued in West Creston, for example, I'm not sure, that may jeopardize their programs. So. But I don't.
I tried to call the question, I'll call in favor. Both motions are carried, recommendations to the board. A couple other things before we go to action item B is banner racing director Tierney, you have an email, I think we want to frame it as a motion.
Yes.
Good.
I just got to put my phone back on again. Sorry. Yeah, I just share with the committee here that as part of the 100 years of ice sports legacy project, which we have heard about from the Creston Valley Minor Hockey Association, the delegation is asking the Creston Valley Services Committee if we could give direction to staff in support of raising a banner at the opening ceremony of the hockey tournament beginning of March, the provincial tournament. The banner would recognize the contribution of Jet Fullerton,
Fumerton, of the Hockey Hall of Fame, as we all know, the oldest female player, centenarian, and Creston resident, and raises a banner to the rafters during the opening ceremonies. Staff at the facility here and Kayla have talked about how this would be done. It's all pretty straightforward, and staff is just requesting that that we give direction for staff to be able to do that. And I'd make that motion that we support that staff work with Kayla to ensure that happens.
Is that a motion? It's not a motion of the board, just direction to staff to coordinate.
Yeah, through the chair, we met with Kayla yesterday, and she had, I think she did bring that for her presentation, and then she sent an email last week, so we met with her yesterday to talk about the credentials and the legacy project and the banner raising, and that it came up here, so that we didn't have to bring it at the last minute, but that is, if the committee gives us direction, we'll work with them to hang that banner. And that would be at the opening ceremonies of the credentials on March the 17th or the 18th of the opening ceremony.
I would second that motion, or I guess that's
Just
the
basically
motion.
that's
Direction to staff.
Our Creston Valley Services Committee supports that. I think that's all we need is.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, direction to staff.
Correct.
Okay,
Thanks.
we've got service review discussion, and I have an email from Mike Morrison who wanted to comment on this. I said, go ahead, Mike, so we will start with Mike.
Okay.
Mike Morrison.
Thank you, and I heard that there was the questions around the process for initiating service withdrawal, so I can speak generally to the process, and following the meeting, I'll send out a link to the directors to a resource guide put out by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs that speaks in detail to the different options for initiating service withdrawal. So there's really three types. There's informal, bylaw-based, and a statutory service review process. The informal and the bylaw-based service reviews are initiated by the board. A statutory review is more formal, and that can be initiated by a service participant. And again, the resource guide will speak to the options for those and what's required for each one. The overall objective of service reviews are really, and this is sort of baked into the legislation, it's really about resolving disputes within services and ensuring that there's a process before any review or withdrawal from a service. So, under the statutory options, the requirement is that a service review takes place before there's any withdrawal from a service. So I will distribute the information. I'll suggest that, that any contemplation of initiating a service review be discussed with Stuart as the logical next step there. When service reviews have happened in the past in the RDCK, it's been Stuart that leads that process on behalf of the organization.
So, Mike, it's Director Vandenberg, and thank you for that background, because that's the sort of thing I have not come across as yet. My intent was not to challenge whether or not services need to be amended, changed, modified, or anything like that. My intent of the question was, we've had a number of presentations that have come to us, each with their own service, but we haven't had an opportunity to discuss the asks, if you will. Other than what comes on the agenda here. And so, for example, museum has made presentation, library has made presentation, high school theater, tourism society, well, no, they didn't make a presentation, but there's a number of services that have made presentation, but yet, where is the forum, what is the process that I can input and choose to accept their recommendations or their ask or debate it. And I would like to debate it with my peers, as opposed to going away and saying, well, in area C, we can sit down with you and you can decide. Yeah, I guess I can do that, but I do want to hear the debate around any given ask. So that is the process going forward for this budget that I'm unsure of.
So, to your points there, it sounds like that's sort of more we're talking about a service review in a more informal sense than a formal statutory review. We do have on the books to create a policy, and this was directed, I believe, coming out of last year's budget process, to create some policy around the information that our financial or grant and aid services are required to present as part of the budget process. So when they come forward with budget requests, we haven't got to that on the list yet, but that would be something that I would think probably forms a broader discussion of our requirements with financial grant and aid services in general. So look for that, forthcoming over the next year, but, there's certainly, as decision-making bodies, it's up to directors to determine the type and quantity of information that is suitable to be getting from these organizations as part of their providing funding to them.
So just to add a little bit further to that, we have a delegation come in, they present to us, we get to ask qualifying questions, and then they go away and we never talk about it again. It's just automatically inserted into the budget without further consideration and conversation. So I am still about having these conversations around these requests, these asks. But I will qualify it again, that I want to hear my colleagues' point of views on this as well. I have a point of view on each and every one of them. But I don't think it's a wholesome discussion for me to say in area C, this is what I want to do. So where is that forum? How are we going to create that forum? When's that forum going to happen before final approval?
Yeah, really on our action list, which we're going to talk about now, follow-up action list, that's covered under items 1 and 5. And I was going to talk to item 5 in a few minutes. That this is an informal process, more level of service review, like Joe and Craig were just discussing. What's the level of service that's reasonable, affordable, and makes sense here in this facility? So that's informal. Also informal, though, is my request for pulling apart and reassembling Jaws of Life, which is taking a little while. And if I felt Area 8 was still in an untenable position with a gap, then I could call for a statutory service review. And having been involved in them as the appointed observer, I don't want to do that to any of you guys. It is a unpleasant path to go down as opposed to us having a good conversation. Are we happy with how we're sharing our funding within our shared services? So, and then in between the bylaw point, I don't know if it's correct to say, Mike, sometimes how you get into a service dictates how you get out. Some of our services we've entered into, like pretty well letter of consent, and some of them are voter assent, and some of them are much more complex. So I hope we can keep almost all of your concerns to informal. But if there's something that we're really doing badly, that you feel you're not getting traction on, then yeah, I agree. You should talk to Stuart about how we can get extra horsepower to make sure we are addressing how we're dealing the cards. If you year after year find it's not a satisfactory process, maybe we need someone outside to come in and tell us that we're not having the right conversations. Because I've felt in that position before, like, wow, why are you doing this to me? Director Davidoff has been in that position. Ramona Fost has been Director Fost in that position. I've seen my peers in that position. They feel frustrated that things just happen. Nobody really listens to their concerns. But let's not do a statutory. Let's not jump to there if we don't have to.
And through the chair, I think there's, this kind of thing over contribution services has come up before. And I don't know which, I know that Director Vandenberg, that Kelly listed a few that we have right now. But, you know, just even the way that piece with the airport that we just did, if we go back a little further, with where you're looking at a master plan for the airport to try and get everybody onto the same page, how this is gonna work going forward. If we go back, way back, Mike will remember, and probably Gary will be the only one around the table at that time. But it was the cemetery master plan that we did in order to try and get everybody onto the same page, how we would do that. And all of those processes were successful in working through those pieces. And just to know, like, you know, that the table has done it before. So Director Vandenberg, don't feel bad about bringing it up, because it's definitely been brought up in the past and handled in a number of different ways. And when the committee did do it, I think we actually probably came to better places.
Okay, so I'm hearing we're gonna have another powwow coming up. We'll have to talk about these things. Great. I'm good, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Okay, moving along then, action item list, is there anything you want to isolate and discuss there?
2, 5, and 10, if I might. Okay, and it's good that Manager Morrison is still on the line. Item 2, somehow, that's the dog control service, somehow it says complete and will be removed from the list. So unless I've been sleeping, it is far from complete. I didn't want an overview or some kind of, you know, how this would be addressed or could be addressed. I was ready to actually write a bylaw, and I still am ready to write a bylaw. Maybe I've miscalculated, but not just writing it, saying, you look at it from a corporate side and say this is good or bad, let's vote on it. I don't want to talk about the frills of a dog control. I want us to have some words to evaluate whether rurally, and maybe with town or not, we want to share a contract where somebody has a compound, training and equipment to apprehend and hold animals, potentially turn them over to either PAWS or SPCA for adoption or destruction as appropriate. And I want that person to work with the RCMP to alleviate the burden on them so that they can address dangerous or threatening animals, dogs. That's what I want. I want a service. I don't want patrols. I don't want someone paid $42,000 a year to try and drive up Grey Creek Road and not find the dog that the neighbor complained about yesterday, because they will never find it. I thought I was absolutely crystal clear about what I want. If you want to deliver what I want, or nobody wants to address that, and we think we're done, I will write a bylaw, because I think I have enough models. I've already pulled a few other ones up. And then I'm going to just put it as a director's motion, pass his bylaw. But how can you say it's finished? I don't understand this. I didn't get a letter of consent to enact the bylaw, and I haven't seen anything on it. And I want town involved, because they may be a very good resource. Aside from our contractor to hold animals, we could share that resource. And they may be able to respond more quickly than Jordan's side can respond to make sure that we're not leaving a dangerous situation unaddressed. Anyway, so on item 2, I just don't understand how it is now complete and being removed from the list. And don't expect an answer today, Mike. It's just, I'm a little floored by those words. Should I do item 5? Okay. Item 5 we just talked about. I just want to flag it. I think that's what Director Vandenberg's been talking about. Good, we're all aware. So long as it starts getting some traction. Item 10, Martel. So really good work, Joe, and your team. I don't know if he is maybe still there. Maybe he's busy doing other stuff. Sounds like we're in the right place. I know Highways has met with YRB. They've talked about placement of boulders, blocking the trailer vehicle access to stay out of the riparian area, which is still 50 feet, not 100 feet. Otherwise, it'd take a year to apply for a EDPA. And I've only had pushback and questions from one resident, so that's all very good. So, the outreach, everything's good. I just want to know, because I know I've asked staff to lay back. Is there anything else we're doing right now? Anything else we've been asked to do by the ministry or by any other group with respect to Martel, other than maybe forwarding our $8,000? Are there any obligations or asks out there? Or does everybody have a pretty clear understanding? And it'll be highways in Yakanuki in future conversations. Are we still talking to Yakanuki about this?
Through the chair, Mark, as far as I would, at the moment, and Mark, please, if you're there, just thanks. Do you want to just jump in on that discussion between MOTI and that? I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I know that.
Yeah, I think Gary sort of laid it out exactly the understanding. There was a meeting that I expect has been done with Ministry of Transportation, YRB, and Curtis Woolham was going to attend on site, and they were going to come up with a plan to approach that. That, you know, we've just connected those parties together. So we're not involved in the decision making on site or anything like that. So I can get an update. I'm meeting with MOTI on Tuesday of next week. I can get an update and forward that off to you, Gary, and others who are interested in.
Sure, it'd be just if they're ready to take our money, maybe is the reason you'd be contacting them. The meeting I'm aware of was January 24th. Just want to know that everything's going smoothly, then hopefully we'll give them $8,000 and not talk to them for 6 months, once everybody has a clear idea about what's in the public interest there.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
Any other items on the action, on the list here that want to talk about? Hearing none,
Creston, it's, go ahead, we didn't pick
go ahead,
it.
Director Chairman.
Yeah, just if we're gonna reschedule that site visit for the Creston Education Center.
I don't mind if you would March 7th, because I've already toured it and it doesn't really involve it. So if you wish to do that at the next meeting, you will be successful and I won't be hurt because I've seen it.
Sounds like a good staff direction.
I have a.
Through the chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
If you have, Sarah, is that your public budget meeting?
Oh, it's not confirmed yet.
I don't think so.
I just don't know if you want to schedule a tour, like that was a problem last time, is that we ran
Yeah,
out of
the
time.
public budget meeting, I think, is after I return from my away time. I think it's later than that.
It's the 13th, Joe, 5 PM, February 13th, 6 o'clock. Sorry, March 13th, 6 o'clock, March 13th.
Yeah.
So if we went to the rec center, I can do my advisory planning from here on the web, but I have a 2 o'clock meeting that afternoon on the 7th.
If that works, I would recommend you do that.
I'm okay with it, free for that.
Ideally, if we didn't take an hour lunch break or anything and did it right after this meeting, then I can have maybe appear in person at my other meeting.
So if pizza was there on site, that'd be awesome.
Okay, probably get that meeting done quickly because I won't be here to chair it.
We don't know who will chair. You have to throw CEC.
So, would like us to go into our closed meeting then?
So I move we exclude the public from the meeting.
Okay. Councilor Lewis can stay. She has freedom to do it.
Chair, are you gonna have public time?
Oh,
Yes, we are. Is there any public online?
I think there's
DR is
Okay.
public, I think, and
Here they go.
Okay, I didn't realize it was public online, but if you have any questions,
You don't have to buy one?